In our quiet house, I lived like an invisible woman beside my cold husband. At 1 a.m. in the garage, a loud thud startled me, followed by his voice whispering to that woman, "Don't worry, she will not find out," trembling all over. I hid in the dark, holding my breath as I watched them secretly load heavy sacks into the truck. When they drove away, I sneaked over to open the remaining sack. What was hidden inside made my heart stop in absolute terror. Take a breath with me before we begin. Before the story continues, drop a quick comment. Have you ever discovered someone you trusted wasn't who they seemed? Yes or no? Your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs today. Quick note, some details are fictionalized for storytelling. Any resemblance to real people or places is coincidental. The message is what matters. I learned to make myself invisible in my own marriage. It was safer that way. Quieter, less complicated when your husband stopped seeing you years ago. Friday evening at the ranch, I sat at the kitchen table with a 19th century ceramic vase cradled between my palms, my fingers stained amber from restoration chemicals that never quite washed out. The kitchen smelled of rosemary chicken roasting in the oven and the sharp bite of acetone from my work. I was Saskia Harrington, 30 years old, a freelance art restorer who'd learned to make broken things whole again, everything except my marriage. Ronan walked through the kitchen door still wearing his charcoal suit from the office, his tie loosened but not removed. My husband was 35, handsome in that angular way that photographs well, and he barely glanced at the delicate restoration work spread across the table before asking, "How much longer until dinner?" 20 minutes, I said, not looking up from the hairline crack I was sealing. He nodded and walked to the refrigerator for a beer. 5 years of marriage, and he'd never once asked what I was restoring or how the work was going. I'd stopped expecting him to notice. Dinner was the usual careful choreography. Our twins Silas and Wren, both 5 years old, sat across from each other at the table. Silas, the older by 3 minutes, pushed peas around his plate with the serious expression he wore when thinking hard about something. Wren chattered about her preschool day, dark curls bouncing as she gestured with her fork, recounting an elaborate story about finger painting and someone named Marcus who ate paste. Ronan scrolled through his phone between bites. I watched him over the rim of my water glass, noting the small details I'd gotten very good at noticing. The way his jaw tightened when Wren asked him a question he didn't want to answer. The automatic, "That's nice, sweetheart," he offered without listening. The way his eyes never quite met mine anymore. After dinner, while I cleaned up and the twins played in the living room, Ronan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop. I heard the familiar click of the mouse, the soft tapping of keys. Normal evening sounds in a normal marriage. But then something changed. I was rinsing plates when I saw him pull a thick, leather-bound catalog from the shelf above the desk. His father Lawrence's antique collection catalog. Lawrence Harrington owned a 25-acre ranch with one of Montana's most valuable private collections of historical artifacts. Ruth, Ronan's mother, who'd died 6 months ago, had been the curator at the Billings Art and History Museum for decades before her sudden fall. Ronan had never shown interest in his father's collection, not in the 5 years I'd known him, not even when Ruth was alive and would talk for hours about provenance and historical significance. But now he was photographing pages of the catalog with his phone, carefully, methodically. One page, then another, the camera flash reflecting off the glossy paper. My hands stilled in the dishwater. "Ronan," I asked, keeping my voice casual, "what are you doing?" He looked up, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across his face, surprise, guilt. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual easy smile. "Dad asked me to digitize some of his records," he said smoothly, "getting everything organized for insurance purposes." I nodded, returned to the dishes. But my mind was cataloging the lie. Lawrence was meticulous about his collection. Everything was already digitized, backed up in 3 separate locations. Ruth had made sure of that years ago. When did I become so good at noticing the small things he thought I'd never see? The weekend passed in its usual rhythm. Saturday morning cartoons with the twins, grocery shopping, a restoration project in my small home studio while Ronan worked in his office with the door closed. Sunday dinner at Lawrence's ranch, where the old man looked grayer and more tired than he had the week before. Grief for Ruth, still fresh in the lines of his face. Monday morning came with frost on the windows and Ronan leaving early for a meeting in Billings. I got the twins ready for preschool, dropped them off, came home to a silent house that felt bigger in the empty daylight. I needed last year's tax documents for a client invoice. Ronan had borrowed them weeks ago for some accounting review and never returned them. His home office was off limits, usually a boundary I'd learned not to cross, but the invisible wife was done playing that role. The room smelled like his cologne and old coffee. His computer monitor glowed, he'd forgotten to turn it off, and the screen hadn't gone to sleep yet. I spotted the tax folder on his desk, reached for it. Then I saw the email open on his screen. From Cressida Frost, subject Phase 3, museum personnel confirmed. My breath caught. Cressida Frost. I'd never heard that name in 5 years of marriage. I leaned closer, my hand hovering over the mouse to scroll down and read the message body. Gravel crunched in the driveway. Ronan's car. My heart slammed against my ribs. I grabbed the tax folder, backed away from the desk, moved to the door. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the cold clarity of finally knowing I wasn't imagining things. I heard his key in the front door as I slipped out of the office folder, clutched to my chest. Saskia, he called. In the kitchen, I answered, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. I returned to the kitchen table, to the vase I'd been working on that morning, picked up my restoration brush, and continued sealing the crack as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Phase 3. Museum personnel confirmed. A woman named Cressida Frost, whose name had never been mentioned in this house. I painted careful strokes of adhesive along porcelain that had broken a century ago, making it whole again, making it look like the damage had never happened. And I wondered what phases 1 and 2 had been. I wondered how long this had been going on. I wondered what my husband was hiding. That weekend I would discover exactly how much. That weekend I couldn't stop thinking about the email. Phase 3. Museum personnel confirmed. Cressida Frost, a name that didn't belong in my husband's inbox in our marriage, in the careful life I'd built around pretending everything was fine. Saturday afternoon, while Ronan took the twins to his father's ranch, I sat at my bedroom desk to handle the monthly bills. It was a routine I'd performed for 5 years, the domestic mathematics of keeping a household running. Mortgage, utilities, car payments, preschool tuition. I moved through the accounts, methodically checking balances, transferring funds, making sure everything balanced the way it always did. Then I opened our joint savings account. The number on the screen didn't make sense, $183.47. I stared at it, my finger frozen on the mouse. That couldn't be right. We'd been putting aside money for years, my restoration fees, portions of Ronan's salary, birthday checks from relatives. The account should have held close to $85,000. I refreshed the page. The number didn't change. This has to be a mistake, I whispered to the empty room. The bank made an error. But even as I said it, I knew better. I clicked on the transaction history, my heart beginning to pound, in that slow, heavy way that means your body understands something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. The list loaded. 14 transfers, each one for a different amount. 6,000 here, 7,000 there, 5,000, 8,000, all marked with the same recipient, Vance Fine Art, LLC. I scrolled up, checking dates. The first transfer had happened 6 months ago in early May, then another 2 weeks later, then another. A steady pattern of withdrawals, each one timed perfectly in between my monthly check-ins, small enough that I wouldn't notice the balance dropping if I wasn't paying close attention to the specific numbers. And I hadn't been paying close attention. Why would I? This was our savings account, our shared future. The money we'd set aside for the twins' college, for emergencies, for the life we were supposed to be building together. 14 transfers, I heard myself say. 1 every 2 weeks for 6 months. While I was cooking dinner, putting our children to bed, restoring broken pottery at the kitchen table. My hands were shaking now. I minimized the bank window and opened a search browser, typed in Vance Fine Art, LLC, Montana. The company website loaded immediately. Clean design, elegant fonts, professional photography of a modern gallery space. The header read, Vance Fine Art, specializing in Western American antiques and Native American artifacts. Opening December 2025, Billings, Montana. I clicked on the About page. There she was. A professional headshot of a woman with long black hair and sharp cheekbones, wearing a burgundy blazer and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Cressida Frost, gallery director. Below her photo, a brief biography. Ms. Frost brings 15 years of experience in fine art acquisitions and private collections. Previously worked with Sotheby's Western Art Division and consulted for numerous private collectors throughout the Mountain West region. How many times had I checked this account and seen the balance slowly climbing, never noticing the pattern of withdrawals timed perfectly between my logins? How many Saturday afternoons had I sat at this exact desk managing our finances, believing I understood our financial situation while my husband systematically drained our savings to fund a gallery with another woman? I clicked through the rest of the website. The gallery's focus areas: Native American pottery, Western landscape paintings, historical artifacts from Montana's territorial period. An opening soon banner promised a grand opening gala in December featuring an exclusive preview collection of museum-quality pieces. Museum-quality pieces, museum personnel confirmed. Phase 3. I sat very still the way you do when the floor beneath you has just collapsed, but gravity hasn't caught up yet. The bedroom was quiet except for the hum of my laptop and the distant sound of a neighbor's lawnmower. Afternoon sunlight slanted through the window, making the dust motes visible in the air. Everything looked normal. The world looked exactly the same as it had 10 minutes ago. But nothing was the same. I went back to the bank account, pulled up each individual transfer, and made screenshots. Dates, amounts, recipient information. Then I downloaded the full transaction history as a PDF. Saved it in 3 separate places: my laptop, a USB drive I kept in my restoration supplies, and emailed it to myself at an old account Ronan didn't know existed. Only then did I let myself feel it. The rage, the betrayal, the cold clarifying fury of understanding that this wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. This was planned, systematic, deliberate. 6 months of careful theft while I slept beside him, while I made his dinner and raised his children and believed we were partners in this life. $85,000, 5 years of savings, vanished into the pocket of a woman I'd never met. I closed the laptop slowly, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest like a living thing. Phase 3. Museum personnel. Cressida Frost. The pieces were starting to connect, forming a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. A gallery specializing in Native American artifacts and Western antiques. Ronan photographing his father's collection catalog. An email about museum personnel being confirmed, and now $85,000 of our money funding it all. Lawrence's collection was worth millions. His late wife, Ruth, had spent 40 years as a museum curator, building relationships with collectors and institutions across the state. And Ronan had access to all of it: the catalog, the storage locations, the insurance documentation. I didn't have the full picture yet, but I was starting to understand its shape. The sound of gravel crunching in the driveway broke my trance. Ronan's car returning with the twins. I heard their voices, bright and happy, as they tumbled out of the back seat. I stood up, smoothed my shirt, checked my face in the mirror. I looked the same, calm, composed. The invisible wife who never made waves. I went downstairs to greet my family, the screenshots hidden safely in multiple locations, the rage locked carefully behind my teeth. And I smiled when Ronan kissed my cheek because I'd gotten very good at pretending everything was fine. But now I was pretending for a different reason. Now I was gathering evidence. The week that followed was a masterclass in performance. I cooked dinner, kissed my husband goodnight, tucked our children into bed, all while screenshots of theft sat encrypted on 3 devices. Ronan never suspected. Why would he? I'd spent 5 years being invisible. Friday evening, the annual real estate gala at the Billings Grand Hotel. Ronan insisted I come this year. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said. I already knew who. The ballroom glittered with golden light from crystal chandeliers, champagne, expensive suits, perfume, and money. Ronan guided me through the crowd with his hand on my lower back, the gesture of a devoted husband. We stopped beside a woman in a black cocktail dress. I shook hands with the woman who'd stolen $85,000 from me and smiled. "Saskia, this is Cressida Frost, my business partner," Ronan said. "We're opening that art gallery I mentioned. Cressida Frost was 28 with dark hair pulled into an elegant chignon and the kind of bone structure that made other women hate her on sight. She was the sleek director of Billings's newest contemporary art gallery, and she extended a perfectly manicured hand with a smile that didn't reach her calculating eyes. "It's lovely to finally meet you," she said, honey smooth. "Ronan speaks so highly of you." "Does he?" I kept my smile pleasant. "Funny he's never mentioned you." Something flickered in her eyes. Amusement. It was gone before I could name it. "The gallery has been a whirlwind project," she said. "I'm sure Ronan wanted to wait until everything was more concrete." "Of course," I said. "He's always so thoughtful." I watched them move through the ballroom together, cataloging every detail. The way Cressida's hand brushed his elbow, how Ronan leaned closer to hear her speak, his body angling toward hers with unconscious familiarity. They moved like people who'd known each other far longer than new business partners. A distinguished man with graying temples approached. "Saskia, you remember Clayton Pierce," Ronan said, "director of the Billings Art and History Museum, old family friend." Clayton Pierce was 52 with expensive wire-rimmed glasses and the confident smile of someone used to being the smartest person in the room. He shook my hand warmly. "I worked with Ruth for years before she passed," he said. "Brilliant woman. We all miss her terribly." Ruth, my mother-in-law who'd died 6 months ago from a fall. The museum curator who'd spent 40 years building Montana's finest institutional collection. The curator who would have known exactly what her son was planning. I watched Cressida touch Ronan's wrist lightly while saying something to Clayton, her fingers lingering just a second too long. Possessive, intimate, the kind of casual touch that only comes from repetition. How long can you smile at people who are destroying your life before the mask cracks? I excused myself to the restroom, splashed cold water on my wrists, studied my reflection. The invisible wife stared back, appropriate dress, appropriate smile. Nothing to see here. I returned and played my role perfectly for another 2 hours. Sunday afternoon, the twins were napping and Ronan was at his office. I went to the basement looking for old toy boxes. The basement smelled of dust and old wood lit by a single bulb casting long shadows. I found Ruth's document box behind a broken chair, brown cardboard, her name in black marker on the side. Inside were exhibition catalogs, collection inventories, correspondence, and at the bottom a brown leather work diary. I opened it carefully. Ruth's handwriting filled the pages, neat methodical notes about acquisitions and authentication. Standard curator documentation. Then the entries changed. December 2024. Saw Cressida and Ronan together at the museum's winter gala. They acted like old friends, but Ronan never mentioned knowing her. January 2025. Cressida asking unusually detailed questions about Lawrence's collection. Specifically interested in Native American pieces. February 2025. Clayton hired Brent Frost as new security contractor. Brent is Cressida's brother. This feels wrong. April 2025. Young archivist Alara Whitfield showed me the after-hours security logs. She is frightened but trustworthy. I told her if anything happens to me, trust Saskia. Saskia will know what to do. I turned pages faster, my heart pounding. Ruth had been investigating them. She'd seen the pattern, the connections, the orchestration of something wrong. The final entry was dated April 20th, 2025, 2 weeks before Ruth died. The page was torn in half. Only the first line remained: Ronan and Cressida are planning. The rest was gone, torn away, leaving a ragged edge. I held the torn page between my fingers, feeling the ragged edge where someone had ripped away Ruth's final warning. The paper wasn't yellowed along the tear. The edge was clean white and recent. Someone had torn this page after Ruth died. Someone had come down to this basement, opened this box, found Ruth's diary, and destroyed the evidence. But they'd missed the earlier entries. They hadn't read it closely, or maybe they'd planned to destroy it with the final shipment, assuming no one would ever search the garage before November 30th. They'd been in a hurry, and they'd underestimated what a woman with nothing left to lose would be willing to look for. They were wrong. I took photos of every page with my phone, then returned the diary exactly as I'd found it. If someone checked, they'd see nothing disturbed. She knew. She tried to write it down, and someone tore it up before she could finish. I climbed the basement stairs slowly, Ruth's words echoing in my mind. My mother-in-law had seen the conspiracy forming. She'd documented it carefully, professionally. And then she'd fallen down the stairs in her own home. An accident, the coroner had ruled, tragic but not suspicious. Old people fall sometimes. But old museum curators who spent careers handling priceless artifacts had excellent balance and careful habits. And old curators who discovered their sons were planning to steal millions didn't fall by accident. I stood in the kitchen, afternoon light slanting through the windows, and understood I wasn't just investigating financial theft anymore. I was investigating murder. Murder. The word sat heavy in my chest as I climbed the basement stairs. But suspecting it and proving it were different things entirely. I needed more than a torn diary page and a pattern of suspicious behavior. That evening, after the twins were in bed and Ronan was watching television downstairs, I locked myself in the small home office we rarely used. The family phone account gave me access to all billing records, something Ronan had set up years ago for tax purposes and never thought to revoke. I logged in and pulled up in May 2025, the month Ruth died. 11 minutes and 23 seconds. That's how long Ruth talked to Ronan the day before she died. The call was right there in the billing records. May 13th, 2025, 6:47 p.m. From Ruth's mobile number to Ronan's. Duration 11:23. I sat very still, staring at the numbers. 11 minutes. Ruth had called her son and spoken to him for over 11 minutes the day before she fell down the stairs in her home. The day after her final diary entry ended with, "Ronan and Cressida are planning." What had she said to him for over 11 minutes? I opened another window and logged into Ronan's phone backup account, the cloud storage he used to sync his contacts and calendar. I'd set it up for him 2 years ago when he got a new phone. He'd never bothered to change the password. May 13th, 2025. His calendar showed a meeting that ran until 6 p.m., then nothing. His call log for that day was completely blank. Not just the call from Ruth, everything. The entire day's call history had been deleted. Someone had gone in and erased it. Carefully, deliberately, removing any record of that 11-minute conversation while leaving the days before and after intact. But they'd forgotten about the phone bill, or maybe they didn't know the billing records kept that level of detail. Either way, the evidence existed in a place they hadn't thought to look. She knew, I whispered to the empty office. She called him to confront him. And the next day, she was dead. I checked Ruth's diary photos on my phone. Her last entry was May 10th, 3 days before the call. She'd written nothing about planning to confront Ronan. Had she decided suddenly, or had something happened that forced her hand? How many pieces of evidence had they erased, thinking no one would ever look closely enough to see the gaps? I downloaded the phone records as PDFs, saved them in 3 locations, and started building a timeline. May 13th, Ruth calls Ronan. They talk for nearly 12 minutes. He deletes all record of the call. May 14th, Ruth dies. The coroner rules it an accidental fall. Case closed. Except nothing about it was closed. Monday morning, I sent the twins to preschool and returned to my office. I needed to know more about the people in Ronan's orbit. I started with the name from Ruth's diary, Brent Frost. Cressida's husband, Ruth, had written. But a deeper search revealed something different. Brent Frost wasn't Cressida's husband, he was her older brother. 44 years old, broad-shouldered, with an unremarkable face in the professional photo I found on the museum's staff directory. Hired January 2025 as museum security coordinator, 4 months before Ruth died. I clicked through to his employment history. Before the museum, he'd worked private security for office buildings and shopping centers. No art experience, no museum background, no credentials that would make him qualified to oversee security for one of Montana's most valuable institutional collections. But Clayton Pierce had hired him anyway, the museum director who was Ronan's old family friend. I pulled up news archives from May 2025, searching for Ruth's death. The Billings Gazette had run a small obituary and an even smaller news item about the accident. Local curator dies in fall. Ruth Harrington, 68, longtime curator at Billings Art and History Museum, died May 14th from injuries sustained in a fall at North Trail hiking area. Museum security coordinator Brent Frost discovered Harrington at approximately 7 a.m. and called emergency services. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The death has been ruled accidental. I read it 3 times. Brent Frost discovered her at 7 a.m. at North Trail, 12 miles from the museum. On a Tuesday morning when he should have been at work. No one had questioned why the museum's security coordinator was hiking 12 miles from his workplace at dawn. No one had asked why he happened to be at that exact location at that exact time. He'd reported it, given a statement, and that was that. The kind of convenient timing that looks like coincidence if you're not looking closely. But I was looking very closely now. I found the incident report filed with the county. Brent Frost, first responder. Time of discovery, 7:03 a.m. Location North Trail mile marker 47. Victim found at base of steep embankment, multiple injuries consistent with fall. No witnesses. No witnesses. Just Brent Frost, Cressida's brother, hired by Clayton Pierce 4 months earlier, happening to be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time to discover Ruth's body before anyone else could. This wasn't an accident, it never was. Ruth had called Ronan the night before to confront him about what she'd discovered. He'd deleted the call, and the next morning she was dead, found by someone who was part of the conspiracy. I stared at the photo attached to the incident report. Brent Frost, Museum Security Coordinator, first responder. An unremarkable face, neither handsome nor ugly, neither young nor old. Medium build, medium height, brown hair going gray at the temples. The kind of face you wouldn't remember after meeting him once. That's exactly the kind of face you need for this. The kind of face that can stand at a crime scene and call it an accident, and no one questions you. The kind of face that blends in, that people trust without thinking about it, that slips away from memory 5 minutes after you've met. Cressida was beautiful and memorable. Ronan was charming and well-connected. Clayton was distinguished and respected. But Brent was invisible, just like me. And invisible people could get away with anything because no one was watching them closely enough to see what they were really doing. I closed my laptop and sat in the quiet office afternoon light, slanting through the blinds. They'd killed her. I didn't know which one had actually done it. Maybe Brent, maybe all of them together. But they'd murdered Ruth Harrington to keep her from exposing their plan. And they'd gotten away with it for 6 months, but I wasn't going to let them get away with it anymore. Knowing Ruth was murdered and proving it were different problems entirely. I needed evidence that would stand up to scrutiny, something concrete that connected all the pieces I'd found. I needed to catch them in the act. Wednesday at 1 a.m., a sound woke me. Ronan's side of the bed was empty, sheets cold. I lay still, listening. There it was again, a muffled thud from somewhere outside the house. I slipped out of bed and moved to the window. Flickering light came from the garage, the kind of dim illumination from a phone flashlight trying not to draw attention. I pulled on my robe and crept downstairs, avoiding the third step that creaked. The twins were sleeping soundly in their room. I moved through the dark kitchen to the side door that connected to the garage. Through the crack in the garage door at 1 a.m., I heard my husband whisper, "Don't worry, she will not find out." I pressed my eye to the gap. Ronan stood beside his truck, the tailgate down. Canvas sacks lined the garage floor, the kind movers use for delicate items. Cressida Frost stood next to him in dark jeans and a black jacket, her elegant hair pulled into a ponytail. They were loading the sacks into the truck bed. Ronan lifted one, carefully, muscles straining with the weight. "This is the last load for tonight," he said quietly. Cressida checked her phone. "Brent's waiting at the warehouse. Clayton confirmed the shipping manifests are ready." "And Sterling?" Ronan asked. "Your brother's keeping his mouth shut. He knows what happens if he doesn't." My breath caught. Sterling. Ronan's younger brother, the accountant who lived in Bozeman and rarely visited. He was involved too. Ronan hoisted another sack. "How much longer until we can close the gallery deal?" "December 1st. Once these pieces are authenticated and sold, we'll have enough to cover the final payment." Cressida's voice was businesslike, efficient. "Your mother's investigation delayed things, but we're back on schedule now." "She will not find out," Ronan repeated, glancing toward the house. Me, the invisible wife who wasn't supposed to notice. I stood there in my nightgown at 1 in the morning, watching my husband load stolen artifacts onto a truck with his mistress, discussing my mother-in-law's murder, like it was a scheduling inconvenience. They finished loading. Cressida climbed into the passenger seat while Ronan closed the tailgate. They drove away without turning on the headlights until they reached the main road. I stood in the freezing Montana night for a full minute after their truck disappeared, my hand still on the cold garage door handle before my body remembered how to move. Then I opened the garage door. 3 canvas sacks remained in the corner, partially hidden behind gardening equipment. They must be the next load. I knelt beside the first one, my hands shaking as I unzipped it. Ceramic vase, 19th century judging by the glazing technique. Beautiful blue and white pattern, slight crack along the base that had been expertly repaired. I turned it over and my heart stopped, not from recognition but from terror. Because if this vase was in this sack in my own garage, it meant Ronan hadn't just been stealing from his father. He had been doing it for months, right under my hands, right under the same roof where my children slept. My repair mark. I'd fixed this vase 2 years ago on a cold January afternoon when Silas had the flu and I was working from home. Lawrence had brought it to me personally, asking if I could restore it. I'd used my signature angled fill technique, a method I'd developed myself that created an almost invisible seam. This was from Lawrence's collection. I set it down carefully and opened the second sack. Bronze miniature Native American ceremonial piece. I recognized it instantly. I'd cataloged it for Lawrence's insurance update last summer, photographed it from 8 different angles, noted every detail of its provenance. My father-in-law's collection. The artifacts he and Ruth had spent 40 years carefully curating, worth millions. And my husband was stealing every single piece. I reached for the third sack with trembling hands. This one was lighter. I unzipped it and found fabric first. Moss green silk, soft and familiar. Ruth's scarf. The one she wore every Sunday to church. The one Lawrence said had gone missing from her closet the morning after she died, the morning Brent had been first on the scene. Someone had been inside her home before the body was even cold. I remembered Lawrence mentioning it, how strange it was that it had simply disappeared. Now I knew exactly where it had gone. Ruth didn't lose that scarf. They took it. Beneath the scarf was a small leather notebook, the kind sold at museum gift shops. I opened it with shaking hands. Ruth's handwriting filled the pages. Not her official work diary, this was something else. Personal notes, observations, dates, and times. November 2024. Our borrowed collection room key claimed L asked him to check insurance values. L never asked. December 2024. Pieces from storage room, photographed without my knowledge. Security footage shows R and C inside after hours. January 2025. BF hired as security coordinator. No museum experience. C's brother. This is deliberate. February 2025. Inventory discrepancies. 3 small bronzes missing from collection room. Replaced with excellent forgeries. March 2025. Confronted Clayton about security gaps. He dismissed concerns. He's involved. April 2025. R asking detailed questions about shipping procedures, international authentication, private sales, building something. May 10th, 2025. Must tell L everything. Can't wait any longer. They're planning to steal the entire collection before year-end. The entries stopped. 3 days later, Ruth had called Ronan for 11 minutes. The next day, she was dead. This notebook was her backup documentation. The evidence she'd hidden in case something happened to her official diary. And somehow it had ended up in a sack of stolen artifacts along with the scarf she'd been wearing when they killed her. They'd taken the scarf as a trophy, or maybe as insurance, something to dispose of if it had blood or DNA evidence on it. He hadn't destroyed it because he couldn't not yet. A notebook in Ruth's handwriting naming him specifically was exactly the kind of thing you kept under your control until you could be certain it was safe to make disappear. Destroying it at the wrong moment would leave ash and questions. Keeping it in a sack headed for the warehouse, then gone overseas with the shipment that was cleaner. No trace. He just hadn't expected me to open the sack before the truck came back. I looked at the small repair mark on the base of the vase, a mark only I knew was there, made with a technique I'd developed myself. This was my father-in-law's collection, and my husband was stealing every single thing. I put the vase back, carefully zipped the sack, stood up, and heard a car engine in the driveway. Headlights swept across the garage door. Ronan was coming back. The headlights swept across the garage door. Ronan's truck pulling back into the driveway, the engine cutting off. I heard the driver's door open. I had 3 seconds to decide: run to the house or stay and pretend I was sleepwalking. Running meant he'd see me fleeing. He'd know I'd been in here investigating. He'd know I knew. I closed my eyes, relaxed my shoulders, and let my arms hang loose at my sides. I steadied my breathing, slow, even the rhythm of deep sleep. I'd read once that sleepwalkers have open but unfocused eyes, but I couldn't risk it. Eyes closed. standing perfectly still in my nightgown in the middle of the garage at 1:45 in the morning. The garage door opened. "Saskia," Ronan's voice was sharp with surprise. "What the hell are you doing out here?" I didn't move, didn't flinch, kept my breathing steady. Footsteps approached. His hand gripped my shoulder, shaking me gently. "Saskia, wake up." I let my eyes flutter open slowly, the way you do when pulled from deep sleep. I looked at him with carefully constructed confusion. Huh. I blinked, glanced around the garage like I was seeing it for the first time. Where am I? I don't remember coming down here. Ronan's expression shifted from alarm to something else. Concern. Relief. He thought I was genuinely confused. "You were sleepwalking," he said, releasing my shoulder. "Christ, you scared me. Have you done this before?" I shook my head, maintaining the confused performance. "I don't think so. I had a nightmare about... I can't remember now. This is so strange." "Come on." He guided me toward the door with his hand on my elbow. "Let's get you back to bed." I let him lead me, stealing one glance back at the canvas sacks in the corner. He didn't look at them. Didn't seem to register that I'd been standing right next to them. At the kitchen door, I paused. "What were you doing out here?" "Forgot my USB drive," he said smoothly. "Had some files I needed for tomorrow's meeting. Go back to sleep. I'll be up in a minute." I climbed the stairs slowly, still playing the role of someone half asleep and disoriented. But my mind was racing. He'd accepted the sleepwalking story completely. Why wouldn't he? I was the invisible wife. The one who didn't notice things, didn't ask questions, didn't pose any threat. I heard him return to the garage and heard the sound of something being moved. The electrical panel, probably. He'd mentioned a USB drive. He was hiding data there along with everything else. 10 minutes later, he slipped into bed beside me. I kept my breathing, even my body still. He fell asleep within minutes. I lay awake until dawn, planning my next move. How many times in a marriage do you have to pretend to be someone else before you forget who you really are? Thursday afternoon, Ronan was at work, and the twins were at preschool. I stood outside his locked home office door with the key I'd found months ago under his desk lamp, the one he thought was his secret hiding spot. I'd never used it before, never violated his privacy, never crossed that boundary. The invisible wife respected her husband's space. But the invisible wife was done playing that role. His desk was neat, organized, professional. I went straight to the locked drawer on the right side. It opened smoothly. Inside were manila folders labeled in his careful handwriting. Insurance, taxes 2024, investment accounts, and one marked simply property. I pulled out the property folder. Mortgage documents, official-looking papers from Rocky Mountain Trust, and Lona, Wyoming bank I'd never heard of. The property listed was Lawrence's 25-acre ranch, the family land that had belonged to the Harringtons for 3 generations. Mortgage value $2.3 million. Dated 6 months ago, the same month Ruth died. I turned to the signature page, my hand steady despite the rage building in my chest. Lawrence M. Harrington, the signature read. But it was wrong. I'd spent 10 years as an art restorer, 5 of those years specializing in document authentication and forgery detection. I could spot a fake signature from across a room. This one was good, professional level good. The overall shape was right, the letter formation close, but the details betrayed it. The pressure on the downstroke of the capital L was too light. Lawrence had arthritis in his right hand. He always pressed harder on downstrokes to compensate for the pain. The angle of the T-cross was off by 2 degrees. The slight hesitation mark on the capital M, where the forger had paused to check their reference, was something Lawrence's natural signature would never have. This wasn't Lawrence's signature. Someone had forged it. Ronan had forged it. He wasn't just stealing antiques. He was stealing the ranch itself. $2.3 million mortgaged against property Lawrence owned outright. Money that went into Ronan's accounts funding the gallery, the theft operation paying off co-conspirators. And when Lawrence inevitably couldn't pay a mortgage he didn't know existed, the bank would foreclose. Ronan would lose the ranch, of course. It was collateral on a fraudulent loan. But by then, he'd have sold the artifacts, closed the gallery deal with Cressida, and vanished with millions. Lawrence would lose everything: his land, his collection, his legacy. I photographed every page of the mortgage documents with my phone, zoomed in on the forged signature, capturing the telling details. The Wyoming bank information, the loan terms. Then I carefully returned everything exactly as I'd found it. folder back in the drawer, locked key under the lamp. I stood in the middle of Ronan's office, surrounded by the trappings of his respectable life law degree, on the wall family photos on the desk, leather chair bought with money he'd earned through legitimate work. All of it a facade, all of it a lie. $2.3 million, three-generation family ranch. Lawrence had no idea his son had already signed away everything he owned, and Ronan thought I was too occupied playing housewife to notice the documents were forged. He believed I wasn't smart enough to understand what was happening right under his eyes. That was his mistake. The invisible wife had been watching everything, learning everything, documenting everything, and now she was going to destroy him. Destroying him meant building a case. Not just suspicion, not just forged signatures and stolen artifacts hidden in canvas sacks. I needed evidence that would stand up in court, that would protect Lawrence from losing everything, that would prove what happened to Ruth. Ruth's diary said Alara Whitfield was trustworthy, frightened. I needed to find out which one would win. Monday morning, I dropped the twins at preschool and drove to the Billings Art and History Museum. The building stood downtown, all glass and limestone, built with donations Ruth had spent 20 years cultivating. Her legacy now run by a man who'd helped murder her. I signed in at the front desk, claiming I needed to research restoration documentation for a client project. The guard waved me through without question. The invisible wife, no threat to anyone. The archives were in the basement, temperature-controlled stacks lined with boxes and filing cabinets. I found Alara Whitfield at a desk in the corner, surrounded by catalog cards and wearing white cotton gloves. She was 24, with nervous hands and kind eyes that darted up when I approached. A museum archives specialist, according to her nameplate. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "Are you Alara?" She nodded, wariness settling across her features. I sat down in the chair beside her desk without being invited. "Ruth Harrington mentioned you in her diary. She said you were trustworthy." The blood drained from Alara's face. I don't know what you're talking about." "My name is Saskia. I'm Ruth's daughter-in-law." I pulled out my phone, showed her the photo of Ruth's diary entry. "She wrote about you 3 weeks before she died. She said you were frightened. Was she right?" Alara's hands shook. She glanced toward the door, then back at me. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Mrs. Harrington approached me in April. She asked about schedules when Clayton and Brent were in the building after hours. I showed her the security logs." Tears welled in her eyes. "She said if anything happened to her, I should trust her daughter-in-law. She said Saskia will know what to do." "What did she find in the logs?" "Clayton and Brent in the collection storage room, multiple times, always late at night, always when they thought no one was watching." Alara's voice cracked. "Mrs. Harrington asked me to keep copies. I did, but then she died and I was too scared to do anything with them." "Do you still have the copies?" Alara reached into her desk drawer with trembling hands and pulled out a flash drive. "Everything's on here. Security footage, entry logs, Clayton's calendar." She plugged it into her computer, opened a folder, clicked on a screenshot. Clayton's calendar from his administrative account. November appointments filled the screen. Then I saw it. November 30th, final transfer. Brent confirmed 11:45 p.m. I left the museum with November 30th burned into my memory, 10 days to gather enough evidence to destroy them all. That afternoon, I ordered a small recording device online. The listing called it Discreet Babysitter Monitoring with Voice-Activated Technology. It arrived Wednesday in nondescript packaging. That evening, I called Detective Rhodes before doing anything. "Montana's a tricky state for recording," she told me. "But if you're a party to the conversation, if you're physically present or on a call, one-party consent applies to you. The key is you need to be in that vehicle with him or on that call when the recording captures incriminating statements. We do this the right way." She walked me through exactly how to position the device legally. I would need to be present during at least one recording session. I arranged to ride with Ronan to a gallery supply run that Thursday, the device capturing every word while I sat in the passenger seat. Battery life 72 hours. I waited. Thursday evening, after the twins were in bed, I retrieved the device while Ronan was watching television. Uploaded the audio files to my laptop in the home office with the door locked and headphones on. 23 hours of recording. Most of it engine noise, radio, Ronan making work calls about property development projects. Then at timestamp 14:32, 18 voices. Ronan. "The last shipment goes out November 30th. Everything needs to be ready by 11:45. Cressida. The buyers confirmed. Full payment on delivery as agreed. A third voice, middle-aged male professional tone. Brent has the route planned. No cameras on North Service Road after 11 p.m. Security's locked down on our end. I froze. That voice. I rewound 15 seconds, listened again. Brent has the route planned. No cameras on North Service Road after 11 p.m. Clayton Pierce. The museum director was sitting in my husband's car. 3 people. Ronan, Cressida, Clayton, and Brent as their executor. Ronan continued. The mortgage clears next week. Once Lawrence defaults, the foreclosure timeline starts. He won't know what hit him. Clayton laughed dry and humorless. Your father built that collection for 40 years. Shame he won't get to keep it. His mistake was trusting family, Ronan said. My mother made the same error. Cressida's voice sharp. Don't talk about her, it's done. It's done, Ronan agreed. And in 2 weeks we'll have cleared 4.8 million in authenticated pieces. The gallery opens December 15th with a completely legitimate inventory, and no one can trace any of it back to us. Except your wife, Clayton said. My breath stopped. Saskia. Ronan laughed. She doesn't notice anything beyond her restoration work and the twins. I could steal the furniture and she wouldn't look up from her pottery. Cressida, she seemed observant at the gala. She's harmless, Ronan said with complete confidence. Trust me, I've been married to her for 5 years. She's not smart enough to put any of this together. The recording continued logistics about shipping routes, authentication documents, buyer contacts, but I'd stopped listening. Not smart enough. I sat in the kitchen at 9 p.m. headphones on listening to my husband's voice discuss theft logistics with the director of the museum, where his mother worked for 32 years. Clayton Pierce, who'd stood at Ruth's funeral and delivered a eulogy about her dedication to preserving history. Who'd shaken my hand at the gala with warm sympathy for her loss. This wasn't a greedy husband stealing from his father. This was a planned organization with schedules, routes assigned roles, buyers lined up, authentication paperwork ready, $4.8 million in remaining artifacts. November 30th at 11:45 p.m., North Service Road with no cameras. And I, the invisible wife who wasn't smart enough, was sitting alone in my kitchen with recordings of their entire conspiracy. I saved the audio files in 5 separate locations, uploaded them to encrypted cloud storage, burned a backup to a USB drive I'd keep in my restoration supplies where Ronan would never look. Then I sat very still in the quiet house and planned exactly how I was going to bring all of them down. They thought I was harmless. They were about to discover how wrong they were. Having evidence meant nothing if Ronan discovered I had it. Every recording, every photograph, every screenshot had to stay hidden while I figured out how to use them without getting caught. The question came at dinner Friday evening, casual as passing the salt. What were you doing at Bernard Hampton's law office yesterday? I froze for half a second, the kind of pause anyone would have when caught off guard, then continued cutting Silas's chicken into smaller pieces, asking about restoring some of Mother's old documents. I said, keeping my voice light. Bernard has a few things Ruth entrusted to him before she passed. I thought I could help preserve them. Ronan reached across the table and picked up my phone, which I'd left face down beside my plate. He glanced at the screen, then placed it on his side of the table instead of mine. A power play, subtle confiscation. Interesting, he said. I didn't know you'd been in touch with Bernard. Just yesterday, I said. He was Ruth's attorney for years. I thought he might appreciate someone taking care of her personal effects. Ronan nodded, ate a bite of chicken, changed the subject to Ren's upcoming preschool Thanksgiving pageant. But my phone stayed on his side of the table for the rest of the meal. He'd been tracking me, following my movements, watching where I went, who I saw. The knowledge settled cold and heavy in my stomach. I'd been so careful with the evidence, encrypted files, hidden USB drive screenshots saved in obscure folders. But I hadn't been careful enough with my physical movements. He knew I'd gone to the law office. What else did he know? Saturday afternoon, Ronan sat in the living room with a glossy brochure for Glacier National Park Resort spread across his lap. I was thinking, he said, looking up as I passed through with a laundry basket. We should take the family to Glacier, get away for a few days, November 28th through December 1st. 3 days, just the 4 of us. I stopped, set down the basket. That's a wonderful idea. The kids will love it. He smiled, genuine warmth in his expression. It's been too stressful lately. Work everything with Dad still grieving Ruth. I think we all need a break. November 28th through December 1st, 300 miles from Billings, right in the middle November 30th at 11:45 p.m. Perfect alibi. Devoted family man on vacation with his wife and children while Brent and Clayton executed the final transfer. Hotel records, restaurant receipts, photos of Silas and Wren at Glacier's scenic overlooks. And me trapped 300 miles away while they stole everything. Let me book the room this afternoon, I said, smiling back at him. I'll find something with a view the kids can enjoy. How many versions of yourself can you perform before you lose track of which one is real? The invisible wife, the sleepwalker, the jealous spouse, the devoted mother planning a family vacation. I was all of them, and none of them shape-shifting through each day while evidence accumulated in hidden folders. Tuesday evening, I set the stage for my most important performance yet. Ronan's smartwatch sat on the nightstand screen glowing with an incoming message. I'd timed it perfectly. Shower running in the bathroom, Ronan still in there, the twins already asleep. I picked up the watch as if by accident, glanced at the screen. Cressida, can't wait to see you Thursday, usual place. I stood very still holding the watch, making sure Ronan would see me with it when he emerged from the bathroom. The water shut off. I heard him moving behind the door. I let the first sob escape just as he opened the bathroom door. He stopped, towel around his waist, hair wet. Saskia. I held up the watch, let tears stream down my face. Real tears, not from sadness, but from fury I'd been holding back for weeks. They worked just as well. Who is she? My voice broke perfectly. Who is Cressida? How long has this been going on? Ronan's face went through several expressions, surprise, alarm, then something that looked almost like relief. It's not what you think, he said, crossing the room quickly. I can feel you pulling away from me, I sobbed, not letting him take the watch yet. Late nights, phone calls you take in the other room, that woman at the gala touching your arm like she owns you. Saskia. He took the watch gently from my hands, set it aside, pulled me into his arms. It's not what you think, it's just business. The gallery project. We've been working closely and maybe the boundaries got blurred, but it's nothing serious. I pressed my face against his bare shoulder and counted silently. 1, 2, 3. You're the one I love, he said into my hair. You and the kids, that's what matters. 4, 5, 6. I'll end it, he promised. I'll make it clear to Cressida that we're business partners only. Nothing more. 7, 8, 9. He hugged me and said, I'm sorry, while I counted to 10 in my head, tracking each second of his relief that I was just a jealous wife and not a threat. He thought I'd discovered an affair. Not the forged mortgage documents, not the stolen artifacts, not the murder of his mother, not the recordings of him discussing logistics with Clayton Pierce. Just simple, predictable marital jealousy. Promise me, I whispered against his shoulder, letting my voice crack with manufactured vulnerability. I promise, he said, holding me tighter. I'm sorry I made you doubt us. He believed it completely. Believed I was crying over another woman instead of over his conspiracy to destroy his father's life. Believed I was too focused on domestic drama to notice financial fraud. The invisible wife worried about her marriage. Exactly what he expected. I let him comfort me for another minute, then pulled away and wiped my eyes. I'm going to wash my face, I said softly. In the bathroom with the door closed, I looked at my reflection. Red eyes, tear-streaked cheeks, the perfect picture of a betrayed wife seeking reassurance. He still thought I was the wife crying out of jealousy, discovering an affair, knowing nothing about the real conspiracy. I needed him to keep thinking that for exactly 8 more days. Until November 30th at 11:45 p.m. 8 days wasn't enough time. Not to build a legal case, not to protect Lawrence's assets, not to ensure Ronan couldn't take the twins from me in retaliation. But 8 days was all I had. Thursday afternoon, while Ronan was at work, I drove to Lawrence's ranch with a folder full of evidence that would destroy his son. I had prepared it the previous night after Ronan fell asleep with his arm still around my shoulder, believing he'd calmed a jealous wife. I slipped out of bed and spent 2 hours at the kitchen table printing bank records, mortgage documents, and screenshots. My hands had shaken the entire time. By 3 in the morning, I had everything organized in a manila folder I hid inside a restoration supply box he would never open. Lawrence Harrington was 72 years old, with Ruth's death still written in the lines of his face. He opened the door and saw my expression, and something shifted in his eyes. Come in, he said quietly. I spread everything across his dining table. Printed screenshots of the forged mortgage documents, audio files queued on my phone, Ruth's torn diary photographed page by page, the calendar screenshot from Alara showing November 30th at 11:45 p.m. Lawrence sat down slowly and studied each piece in silence, the forged signature bearing his name, the recordings of Ronan discussing theft logistics, the diary entries documenting Ruth's growing suspicion. When he finally looked up, his question was simple and devastating. Do you have enough to arrest them? Not denial, not shock, just pragmatic assessment of the evidence before him. I don't know, I admitted. I'm not a lawyer or a detective, I'm just... You're my daughter-in-law who's been conducting a criminal investigation alone for weeks, Lawrence said. His voice was steady, but something raw moved beneath it. And you found more than the police did after Ruth died. You suspected, I said, not quite a question. He nodded slowly. Small things. Ronan asking too many questions about the collection's insurance value. Money disappearing from accounts I shared with Ruth. The way she was acting in her final weeks distracted worried writing in that diary constantly. He touched the printed pages of Ruth's torn notebook. But I had no proof. Just an old man's paranoia about his own son. It wasn't paranoia. No. Lawrence picks up the mortgage document, studied his forged signature. $2.3 million. He stole my ranch with a pen stroke. I showed him the torn diary pages, then Ruth's final entry ending mid-sentence. Ronan and Cressida are planning. My voice broke. The weight of everything I'd been carrying alone for weeks crashed down suddenly, and I started crying. Not the performance from Tuesday night. Real tears for Ruth, for Lawrence, for the family that had been torn apart by greed. Lawrence reached across the table and placed his weathered hand over mine. She would be proud of you, he said quietly. Ruth always said you were stronger than you looked, said you had a good eye for detail, that you saw things other people missed. She'd be proud you didn't let them get away with this. I wiped my eyes, tried to steady my breathing. What do we do? November 30th is in 8 days. They're moving the final shipment, 4.8 million in artifacts. If we don't stop them, we go to the police, Lawrence said. Today, right now, I have lawyers' resources connections. We get Detective Celeste Rhodes involved. She handled the investigation into Ruth's death. She'll want to know it wasn't an accident. His phone rang, then interrupting us. He glanced at the screen, frowned. Sterling, he said. Ronan's brother, I should... Answer it, I said. He's been helping them. Ruth's diary mentioned him. Lawrence answered on speaker. Sterling. Dad? Sterling Brooks's voice came through shaky, panicked. Ronan's younger brother, 33, an accountant in Bozeman I'd met maybe twice in 5 years. Dad, I need to talk to you. Is Saskia there? Lawrence and I exchanged looks. She's here, Lawrence said carefully. Good. She needs to hear this too. Sterling took a breath that sounded like he'd been running. Ronan knows. He knows Saskia's been investigating. He asked me yesterday if I'd noticed her acting strange, asking questions. He's already talked to a custody lawyer. My blood went cold. What custody lawyer? Sterling repeated. Top firm in Billings. He's building a case that you're unstable paranoid. He showed them evidence, the sleepwalking incident, emotional breakdown over Cressida, said you've been obsessing over Ruth's death. He's preparing to file for full custody of Silas and Wren. Lawrence's expression darkened. When? I don't know. Soon. And there's more. Sterling's voice dropped. I found offshore accounts. Cayman Islands. Ronan and Brent have been moving money there for months. Millions. I didn't know what it was for until yesterday, but now, Dad, I'm sorry. I should have come forward sooner. I was scared. Through Lawrence's kitchen window, I could see ranch hands loading hay bales onto a truck in the afternoon sun. Normal work on a normal Thursday. Life continuing as if the world hadn't just tilted sideways. How much time do we have? Lawrence asked. Days, Sterling said. Maybe less. Ronan's moving faster now. I think he knows the timeline's compressed. He's been making calls, moving assets, preparing to disappear after November 30th. Lawrence looked at me across the table, covered in evidence. We move now. Today. No more waiting. I nodded, mind racing through options, timelines, legal procedures I barely understood. Sterling's voice came through the phone again. Saskia, be careful. My brother's dangerous when he's cornered, and he knows you're coming for him now. The call ended. Lawrence and I sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the ranch hands continued their work, unaware that everything was about to change. I have a legal team on retainer, Lawrence said finally. They'll help us navigate the custody threat. But we need law enforcement involved immediately. Rhodes needs to see this evidence today. Today, I agreed. And Saskia? Lawrence's voice was gentle but firm. You can't go back to that house. Not tonight. Not until we have protection in place. He'll know you came here. He'll escalate. The weight of it settled over me. My husband knew I was investigating him. He was preparing to take my children. The timeline had collapsed from 8 days to right now, this moment, this decision. I looked at the evidence spread across Lawrence's table. Proof of theft, fraud, murder. Everything I'd gathered alone in the dark while pretending to be the invisible wife. I had to finish this before he finished me. Lawrence made the call from his truck while I sat beside him, hands shaking. Detective Celeste Rhodes, Montana State Police. She'd handled Ruth's death investigation, ruled it accidental. Now we were about to tell her it was murder. The Montana State Police office in Billings was gray concrete and fluorescent lights. Lawrence and I sat across from Detective Rhodes in a small conference room that smelled like bad coffee and decades of cigarette smoke that no amount of cleaning could erase. Detective Celeste Rhodes was mid-40s with sharp gray eyes and the kind of calm authority that came from 20 years of closing impossible cases. She'd listened to our story for exactly 3 minutes before asking her first question. How long have you known your husband is a killer? The words hit like cold water. Not alleged, not suspected, just simple, direct fact. 6 weeks, I said, since I found Ruth's diary. I handed her the encrypted USB drive. Everything's on here. Car recordings of Ronan discussing the theft with Clayton Pierce and Cressida Frost. Forged mortgage documents. Ruth's diary documenting their conspiracy. Calendar screenshots showing the November 30th transfer date. Rhodes plugged the drive into her laptop, clicked through folders, her expression unchanging. Then she opened the car recording file and pressed play. Ronan's voice filled the small room. The last shipment goes out November 30th. Everything needs to be ready by 11:45. Then the third voice, the one I'd struggled to identify at first. Brent has the route planned. No cameras on North Service Road after 11 p.m. Rhodes stopped the recording. Clayton Pierce, she said flatly. I'd recognize that voice anywhere. He's been on our radar for months, suspected involvement in museum artifact trafficking across Montana. We just couldn't prove he was dirty. Lawrence leaned forward. Can you arrest them now today? Not yet. Rhodes clicked through more files. This is good evidence, but we need them in possession of the stolen property. Recordings can be explained away, business discussions, hypotheticals. We need them caught red-handed with the artifacts' faces on camera, chain of custody intact. November 30th, I said. That's our window. 10 days. Rhodes studied me across the table. Can you maintain your cover at home for 10 more days? Act normal, keep him from suspecting you're working with us. Lawrence's hand trembled as he gripped his chair, the first time I'd seen my father-in-law show real fear. You're asking her to walk into a room with murderers. I'm asking her to wear a wire during the transfer and help us catch an organized theft ring that's stolen millions in cultural artifacts. Rhodes' gaze didn't leave my face. It's dangerous. I won't lie to you. But it's also the only way to get everyone involved. Ronan, Cressida, Brent, Clayton, all of them in one place committing a felony we can document. I thought about Silas and Wren, about Lawrence losing everything Ruth and he had built, about Ruth's diary ending mid-sentence because someone had silenced her. I'll do it, I said, but whatever it takes. Rhodes pulled out a yellow legal pad. Here's how this works. You go home. Act normal. We'll do surveillance on Ronan's movements, but we can't tip our hand. November 30th, at 11:45 p.m., you'll need to be wherever the transfer happens. We'll wire you beforehand, position teams at the location. You document everything, voices, faces, the artifacts being moved. Then we move in. She could get killed, Lawrence said, his voice rough. She could, Rhodes agreed. Which is why we'll have 6 officers positioned at strategic points. The moment we have what we need, we extract her and make the arrests. The meeting lasted another hour. Details, procedures, contingencies, what to do if Ronan discovered the wire, how to signal if I was in danger, emergency contact protocols. When we finally left, the sun was setting over Billings. I sat in Lawrence's truck in the parking lot and tried to steady my breathing. You don't have to do this, Lawrence said quietly. We can find another way. There is no other way, I said. You heard her. This is how we protect your collection, how we prove Ruth was murdered, how we— My phone rang. Sterling. I answered on speaker. Sterling. Saskia. His voice was tight with panic. I got more information. Ronan met with Gavin Fletcher yesterday. Who's Gavin Fletcher? Top custody attorney in Montana. Most ruthless lawyer in family court, known for destroying opposing parties' reputations. Sterling took a shaky breath. I got access to leaked drafts of the petition Ronan's planning to file. He's calling you mentally unstable, history of paranoia, claims your obsession with Ruth's death and accusations against him prove you're a danger to Silas and Wren. My vision narrowed. When does he plan to file? Best guess right after November 30th. Once he's got the money and the operation's complete, he files for emergency custody, paints you as delusional, and disappears with the twins while you're tied up in court trying to defend yourself. The words echoed in my mind. Mentally unstable, paranoid, unfit. Ronan weaponizing my investigation against me, using my attempt to expose him as proof I was crazy. There's one more thing. Sterling's voice dropped to a whisper. The petition names witnesses, people who'll testify you're unfit. My blood froze. Who? Alara Whitfield and Juniper. Juniper, Ronan's sister. My sister-in-law, who I'd only met a handful of times, who lived in Helena and barely spoke to the family. And Alara, the museum assistant who'd helped me, who Ruth had trusted. He got to them, I said, my voice hollow. Threatened them, bribed them, something, Sterling said. I don't know how, but they're listed as witnesses who'll testify you've shown erratic behavior, made wild accusations, demonstrated paranoid delusions. Lawrence and I sat in silence after Sterling hung up. The parking lot lights flickered on as darkness settled over Billings. He's not going to win, Lawrence said finally. We won't let him take those children. No, I said, and my voice was steel. He's not taking my children, absolutely not. But as I drove home through the Montana night, I understood the trap Ronan had built. Every step I'd taken to expose him, he'd prepared to use against me. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered, he'd frame as proof of my instability. I had 10 days to catch him, and he had 10 days to destroy me first. Ronan had weapons, witnesses who'd lie, a custody attorney who specialized in destroying mothers. But I had something he didn't expect. Ruth had prepared for this. Thursday morning, 1 week before November 30th, I sat across from Bernard Hampton in his law office. Bernard was in his 60s, the Hampton family attorney for 3 decades, and the weight of Ruth's final secret showed in every line of his face. He slid a sealed envelope across his desk with hands that shook. Ruth came to me 3 weeks before she died, he said quietly. Said she needed to protect you, specifically you. I stared at the envelope. Ruth's handwriting on the front. To be opened only upon conviction of Ronan M. Harrington for crimes against family property. She knew, I whispered, about Ronan. She didn't say it outright, but she knew something was very wrong. Bernard opened a separate folder. She amended her will with a sealed protection clause. If Ronan is convicted of any crime related to the family property or collection, the entire inheritance transfers to you in trust for Silas and Wren. Lawrence retains lifetime residency, but ownership goes to your children. The ranch, the collection, everything Ruth and Lawrence had built over 40 years. The clause activates only upon guilty verdict, Bernard continued. Until then, it remains sealed. Ruth was very specific about that. She said if she was wrong about her suspicions, the family could continue normally. But if she was right, she wanted to make sure he couldn't profit from murdering her. I finished. Bernard nodded slowly. She also left you this. He handed me a letter, Ruth's familiar handwriting covering the page. Dear Saskia, if you're reading this, I was right about my son. I'm sorry I couldn't stop him myself. Protect my grandchildren. Protect Lawrence. You're stronger than you know. Love, Ruth. I folded the letter carefully, my hands steady despite the grief crushing my chest. Ruth had known. She'd spent her final weeks preparing legal protections, documenting evidence, trying to warn people, and they'd killed her anyway. Ruth's sealed envelope sat on Bernard's desk, like a time bomb between us. 3 weeks of warning she'd tried to give from a grave she didn't know was coming. Thank you, I said to Bernard, for keeping this safe. Get him convicted, Bernard said simply. That's how you thank her. That afternoon I drove to Lawrence's ranch. Detective Rhodes was already there, spreading maps and diagrams across the kitchen table. Industrial warehouse on North Service Road. Rhodes said, pointing to a highlighted location. We confirmed it through surveillance. Ronan's been there 3 times this week. Brent Frost rented it 2 months ago under a shell company. Lawrence studied the map, his expression grim. How do we do this without getting Saskia killed? 4-point positioning. Rhodes traced locations on the map. My team here, here, and here. 4th position is Saskia's entry point. We wire her beforehand, she goes in when they start loading documents, everything on camera and audio. The moment we have sufficient evidence, we move in. You stay in the car until we secure the scene, Rhodes said, looking at me. Too dangerous otherwise. No, I said. Rhodes blinked. Excuse me? I need to be there when you arrest him. I need to look him in the eyes. That's not protocol. I don't care about protocol. My voice was steel. I've spent 6 months gathering this evidence. I've lived with a murderer, slept beside him, raised children with him, while he planned to steal everything from his own father. When those warehouse doors open and you arrest Ronan Harrington for murdering his mother, I need him to see me. I need him to know exactly who ended this. Lawrence spoke quietly. She's earned that right. Rhodes studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. After we secure the scene, not before. One wrong move and he could kill you before we breach the doors. Agreed, I said, though we both knew I'd do what I needed to when the moment came. Rhodes pulled out her notepad. Now let's talk about the vacation cancellation. You need to be here for the operation, but Ronan can't know you stayed behind deliberately. It has to look natural. The children, Lawrence said. Sick children. No mother leaves sick kids for a vacation. Exactly. Rhodes leaned forward. 2 days before departure, that's November 28th, Silas develops a fever. Ren has stomach flu. You call Ronan at work, tell him you can't possibly leave them. He suggests postponing the whole trip. I insist he still go, I said, seeing the pattern. He's been so stressed he needs the break. I'll be fine with Lawrence helping. And he agrees too quickly, Rhodes finished. Because he wanted to go alone anyway. Perfect alibi while the transfer happens. He can't suspect you're staying behind to watch him, Rhodes emphasized. It has to be about the kids, nothing else. I'll make it convincing, I said. I've gotten good at lying to my husband. Lawrence's hand covered mine briefly. 1 more week, then no more lies. We spent another hour reviewing details. The wire equipment I'd wear. The signal if something went wrong. Where Lawrence would keep Silas and Ren during the operation. Emergency protocols if Ronan discovered the plan early. How many times can you rehearse the moment you destroy your husband before it stops feeling like murder? As Rhodes was leaving, she turned back at the door. You promised to follow protocol. Stay back until we secure the scene. Let us handle the arrest. I nodded. I promise. But we both knew it was a lie. When those warehouse doors opened, and Ronan stood surrounded by stolen artifacts meant for his mother's memory, I would be the first person he saw. Not Rhodes, not some anonymous police officer. Me, the invisible wife he'd underestimated for 5 years. The woman he thought was too stupid to notice his conspiracy. The mother he planned to call mentally unstable in family court. I would be standing there when his world collapsed, and I would make sure he knew exactly who had brought him down. The final 5 days before November 30th were the hardest performance I'd ever given. Not because I had to pretend I didn't know about the conspiracy, but because I had to watch Ronan be a good father while knowing what he'd done. Then somewhere between my conversation with Detective Rhodes and the custody petition Sterling warned me about, Ronan changed tactics. He arrived home Monday with sunflowers. I recognized immediately what had shifted. He wasn't being a better husband. He was building evidence, witnesses who could testify to his devotion. A paper trail of good father behavior timed precisely before he filed to take my children. He came home Monday with sunflowers, my favorite, though he'd forgotten that detail for the past 3 years. Set them in a vase on the kitchen counter while I cooked dinner. Kissed my cheek, asked about my day. I've been working too much, he said, watching Silas and Ren color at the kitchen table. I want to spend more time with you and the kids. I recognized the performance, building evidence, creating a trail of good husband behavior before filing his custody petition. Text messages to friends about family time, photos with the children, witnesses who could testify he was devoted, present, loving. But watching him play trucks with Silas that evening, hearing him laugh genuinely at Ren's silly jokes, I felt something crack inside me. What if I'm wrong about everything and destroying a man who genuinely loves his children? Tuesday he came home early. Wednesday he suggested we all make cookies together, flour ending up everywhere, Wren giggling as she licked frosting from the spoon. Thursday he read bedtime stories in funny voices that had both twins begging for one more chapter. I watched him tuck Silas and smooth Wren's hair back from her forehead, whisper, "I love you," to each of them. And some small, terrible part of me wondered if the man who could be this gentle with our children was capable of murdering his own mother. Then I'd remember Ruth's torn diary, the forged mortgage, the recordings, the stolen artifacts in canvas sacks. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like fathers reading bedtime stories. Friday evening, 3 days before November 30th. I sat on Wren's bed reading her favorite book about a princess and a dragon. She was almost asleep, her 4-year-old face peaceful in the soft lamplight. Then she asked a question that made my blood freeze. "Mommy, does Aunt Cressida come to our house a lot?" I kept my voice steady, turned the page like nothing had changed. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" "I saw her and Daddy in the garage." Wren yawned, rubbing her eyes. "When I got up for water that night, they were moving big bags. She has such pretty hair, long and black. I wanted hair like that." My hands gripped the book so hard the spine cracked. "When was this baby?" "I don't remember. It was dark. I was thirsty." She yawned again. "Are we friends with Aunt Cressida?" Before I tell you what happened next, are you still with me? Comment. A, if you think Wren remembers more than she's saying, or B, if she truly doesn't understand what she saw, and add one reason why in 10 words or less. A quick note. What follows includes some recreated details for narrative depth. The message is what matters. "We know her from Daddy's work," I managed, "but she's not really your aunt." "Oh." Wren's eyes were already closing. "She seemed nice. Daddy told her to be quiet so we wouldn't wake up." I finished the story, somehow my voice automatic while my mind raced. Kissed. Wren's forehead turned off the lamp, closed her door with hands that shook. My 4-year-old daughter had witnessed the crime, seen Cressida Frost and Ronan loading stolen artifacts, remembered it clearly enough to describe Cressida's long black hair, to recall Ronan telling her to be quiet. Wren was an unwitting witness to felony theft. I stood in the dark hallway for a long moment, then went downstairs to where Ronan sat watching television. Smiled at him, asked if he wanted tea, played the role of the wife who knew nothing. But later, after he'd gone to sleep, I sat in Wren's bedroom doorway and watched her breathe. Peaceful, innocent, dreaming of princesses and dragons and long black hair like Aunt Cressida's. She had no idea what she'd seen, no concept that the big bags were stolen artifacts worth millions, no understanding that her father was a thief and a murderer, and she would never have to understand. My daughter sleeps peacefully, dreaming of storybook princesses, unaware she holds evidence that could convict her father. "You'll never have to remember, baby," I whispered into the dark. "I promise." November 30th had to be perfect. The sting operation had to capture everything on camera and audio, because I couldn't let them put my 4-year-old daughter on a witness stand. Couldn't let her testify in court about the night she saw Daddy and the pretty lady with long black hair moving big bags in the garage. Wren would never have to relive that night, never have to face defense attorneys asking her to describe what she'd seen, never have to learn that her innocent memory could send her father to prison. I would get enough evidence on November 30th to make her testimony unnecessary. 3 more days, just 3 more days of this lie. I pulled out my phone and texted Rhodes. "We have a problem. My daughter saw Cressida Frost at the scene." The response came within seconds. "Don't let Wren mention this to anyone. If Ronan knows she remembers, he'll accelerate everything. Protect that witness." I deleted the message thread, then sat in the quiet house listening to my family sleep. Ronan in our bedroom, Silas and Wren in theirs, all of us under one roof for 3 more nights. Then everything would change. I returned to Wren's room, stood beside her bed, watched the rise and fall of her small chest. "She will never have to remember that night in a courtroom," I whispered. "I promise her." And I would keep that promise, whatever it took. Protecting Wren meant making sure the November 30th operation captured everything. No room for error. No relying on a 4-year-old's memory of that night in the garage. Just clean evidence that would put Ronan away without my daughter ever having to face a courtroom. November 28th. 2 days before the sting. Ronan came home with that particular energy I'd learned to recognize anxious excitement barely contained. He kissed my forehead in the kitchen and said, "I can't wait for our trip tomorrow." And for the first time in months, I smiled back genuinely, because I knew exactly what was about to happen. "So we're all set?" he asked, checking his phone for the third time in 5 minutes. "Kids packed." I touched Ren's forehead where she sat coloring at the table. She'd actually developed a mild fever the night before perfect timing I hadn't even planned. "Actually," I said carefully, "Ren's fever got worse, and Silas was up sick last night too. I don't think we can travel tomorrow." Ronan's face went through several expressions: concern, disappointment, then something else relief quickly masked. "Maybe we should postpone the whole trip," he said, but his voice carried hope. "No, you should still go." I kept my tone supportive wifely. "You've been so stressed lately. You need this break. Lawrence can help me with the kids." "Are you sure?" The question came too quickly, too eager. "I hate leaving you with sick kids." "I'm sure you deserve this." He checked his phone again, typed something, set it down with a satisfied expression. Brent or Clayton had just confirmed everything was ready. The warehouse, the final shipment, November 30th at 11:45 p.m. Both conspiracies converging on the same night: Ronan's alibi vacation and the theft operation. Except now he had a better alibi. Devoted father who'd wanted family time but stayed committed to his solo trip when the kids got sick. Understanding wife who insisted he still go. Perfect. "Okay," he said, pulling me into a hug. "But I'll be back December 1st, and we'll reschedule this trip." We moved around each other like chess pieces in endgame, every gesture calculated, every word a strategy. That evening I watched him pack. Glacier National Park brochures on the bed, hiking boots he'd never wear, a small duffel bag that would never see the inside of a hotel room. He kissed Silas and Ren goodbye theatrically, promising to bring back souvenirs. Promised me he'd call from the lodge. Every word a performance, every gesture building his cover story. I stood at the window and watched his truck pull away into the November darkness. Heading toward Glacier, he'd tell anyone who asked. Actually heading to a warehouse 15 miles west of Billings where he'd oversee the final theft from his father's collection. The house felt different with him gone, quieter, safer. I texted Lawrence, "He's on his way." The response came immediately. "Come over tomorrow evening. Bring the kids. They can sleep here while you handle what needs handling." November 29th passed in slow motion. I took care of Silas and Ren, their fevers breaking by afternoon. Packed their overnight bags. Tried not to think about the wire I'd be wearing in 24 hours. Evening came. I drove the twins to Lawrence's ranch, the Montana sky huge and dark overhead. Lawrence had prepared the guest room for them. Silas and Ren were asleep by 8, exhausted from being sick. Lawrence and I sat in his kitchen drinking coffee neither of us wanted. His phone rang, Sterling. Lawrence put it on speaker. "Dad?" Sterling's voice was rough, shaky. "I sent everything to Detective Rhodes. The Cayman accounts, transaction records, 2 years of wire transfers, all of it." "Thank you, son," Lawrence said quietly. "I should have done this sooner." Sterling sounded like he was crying. "I've been trying to stop him for 2 years, but I was too afraid. Afraid of what it would do to the family. Afraid of what Ronan would do to me if he found out I was gathering evidence." "You're doing the right thing now," Lawrence said. "That's what matters." "I can't be there tomorrow," Sterling said. "I can't watch them arrest my brother. I can't see his face when he realizes I'm sorry. I can't." "You don't have to be there," I said. "You've done enough." "Tell Saskia I'm sorry I didn't help sooner," Sterling said. "Ruth tried to warn me, tried to show me the evidence she was gathering. I didn't want to believe it. I chose my brother over the truth, and she died because I was a coward." "You're not a coward," Lawrence said firmly. "You're a man who loved his family and struggled with an impossible choice. But you chose right in the end." After Sterling hung up, Lawrence and I sat in silence for a long moment. "There's still one good child in this house," Lawrence said, finally looking at the phone. We moved outside to the backyard. The night was cold and clear, stars scattered across the Montana sky like diamonds on black velvet. Lawrence started a small fire in the stone pit, and we stood watching flames dance. "She always said you were the one who saw clearly," Lawrence said quietly. "Even when you thought no one was watching you, she was watching, and she trusted what she saw." "I just want it to be over," I admitted. "I want to stop lying, stop performing, stop pretending." Tomorrow night, Lawrence said, no more lies. I looked up at the Montana stars. Same stars Ruth had looked at her whole life. Same stars that would witness tomorrow's reckoning. 6 months. 6 months of gathering evidence, living with a murderer playing the role of the invisible wife. 6 months of screenshots and recordings and forged documents hidden in encrypted files. Tomorrow it would finally end. My phone buzzed. Rhodes. Team positions confirmed for tomorrow night. 4 officers, 2 entry points, wire equipment ready. Confirm you're still in. I typed back, I'll be there. Lawrence read over my shoulder and squeezed my hand. Tomorrow everything changes, he said. I nodded, watching sparks from the fire spiral up toward those ancient stars. Tomorrow, for the first time in 6 months, I'd be able to look Ronan in the eye and tell him the truth. Not the performed truth of the jealous wife, or the sleepwalking woman, or the devoted mother. The real truth. That I'd seen everything, known everything, documented everything, and that the invisible wife he'd underestimated had destroyed him. At 6:45 a.m. November 30th, I wake my children and whisper, "Today we're playing a very special secret game with Mommy." Wren's eyes flutter open, sleep still clinging to her lashes. "A game! The best kind," I say, keeping my voice conspiratorial. "You're going to pretend to be sick so Daddy stays home from his important meeting." Silas sits up immediately, alert, the way only a 5-year-old boy can be at the prospect of a secret game. Like spies. Exactly like spies. I smooth his hair back, feeling the weight of what I'm asking them to do. What kind of mother turns her children into accomplices? The kind whose husband murdered his own mother, I remind myself. The kind who has 11 hours until justice finally catches up to a man who thought he was untouchable. I coach them through the performance. Wren practices her most pathetic cough. Silas clutches his stomach with theatrical flair that would make a soap opera actor proud. We rehearse their lines, their complaints, the precise timing of their groans. Remember, I tell them, this is very important. After Daddy leaves, the game is over and you'll be fine again. But while he's here, you have to make him believe it. Wren's face grows serious. Is Daddy bad? The question stops my heart. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her father is a monster wearing a handsome mask, that the man who reads her bedtime stories also orchestrated the murder of her grandmother? Daddy made some very wrong choices, I say carefully. And today some people are going to help make sure he understands that. At 7:03 a.m. I call Ronan. He answers on the second ring, already irritated. What's wrong? The kids are sick, I say, injecting just the right amount of panic into my voice. Both of them. Fever, upset stomachs. I think it might be that virus going around St. Catherine's. A pause. I can practically hear him calculating, weighing his meeting against the optics of abandoning sick children. How sick? Sick enough that I can't handle both of them alone. Ronan, I need you here. Another pause, longer this time. I have the wire transfer meeting at 5 p.m. It's crucial. Oh, I know exactly how crucial, I think. You're picking up $4.8 million in bearer bonds from Clayton Pierce, closing the deal that's been 6 years in the making. The deal that started with Ruth's murder. I'm not asking you to miss it, I say, making my voice small, defeated. The invisible wife he's trained me to be. Just come check on them. Make sure it's nothing serious. You always know what to do. The flattery works. It always does with Ronan. I'll be there in 40 minutes, he says, but I can't stay long. Ronan arrives at 7:52 a.m., his overnight bag still in hand from what I assume was another night at Clayton's planning their final logistics. He walks into the house like he still owns it, like he hasn't stolen everything that mattered. He doesn't know that I changed the locks yesterday, that the deed to this house is now solely in my name, transferred as part of Lawrence's protective measures, that every single thing he thinks he controls has already slipped through his fingers. Where are they, he asks. Upstairs, Silas's room. I've staged it perfectly, both children and Silas. Sped looking appropriately miserable. Wren's forehead is warm from the heating pad I placed there 2 minutes ago. Silas clutches his stomach with convincing distress. Fluids rest children's Tylenol if the fever spikes. You're so good at this, I say, the dutiful wife admiring her husband's medical expertise. I always panic. You always know exactly what to do. He accepts the praise as his due. Call me if they get worse, but they'll be fine. Your meeting, I say. Will you make it back in time? Something flickers across his face. Satisfaction, anticipation. I'll make it. This meeting has been years in the making. Nothing's going to stop it now. Years in the making. If he only knew that Detective Rhodes has had a surveillance team on Clayton Pierce for 3 weeks. That every wire transfer, every email, every phone call has been documented and cataloged. That the meeting he's been planning since 2019 will end with handcuffs instead of bearer bonds. Ronan kisses both children on the forehead with a tenderness that would break my heart if I didn't know what those hands have done, what they've stolen, who they've killed. At the door, he turns back. You've been different lately, stronger somehow. My blood turns to ice. Does he know? Has he figured it out? It's been a hard 6 months, I say carefully. Losing Ruth, everything with Lawrence's health scare. I guess I had to grow up fast. He studies me for a moment that stretches into eternity. Then he smiles that charming smile that once made me believe I was the luckiest woman alive. It looks good on you, Independence. He leaves at 8:17 a.m. I watch from the window as his BMW pulls out of the driveway, heading toward his destiny with Clayton Pierce and Detective Rhodes's tactical team. I wait until his car disappears around the corner. Then I turn to my children. Get up, kids. I have to go do something important. I text Rhodes. He just left, heading your direction. The response comes immediately. We're ready. Wire pickup at 5 p.m. Don't be late. 11 hours until I see my husband arrested for murdering his mother. The concrete smells like motor oil and rust. What if he sees me too early, I whisper. He won't. Trust the plan. We're right outside. Outside. Rhodes and her tactical team have been in position at 4 entry points since 10 a.m. 14 hours of waiting. For me, it's been 6 months. 11:15. Streetlight filters through cracks in the loading dock door, creating geometric patterns on concrete. Every sound amplifies my breathing distant traffic, the wire microphone rustling against my collar. My mind cycles through evidence. Ruth's torn diary, the moss-green scarf in the evidence bag, Silas and Ren sleeping safely at Lawrence's ranch tonight. Ronan's voice in the garage 6 months ago. She will not find out. But I did find out. Ruth died believing her son loved her. She never knew the hiking trip he suggested, the trail he recommended, the accident that killed her, all choreographed. She trusted him until Brent Frost pushed her off that overlook. Waiting in darkness feels like holding breath underwater. Lungs burning, vision narrowing, knowing the surface is close, but not close enough. I've been drowning in Ronan's lies for 6 months, performing oblivious wife while building the case that will destroy him. Tonight I surface. In 30 minutes, I'll know if I have enough evidence to protect my children, I whisper. The earpiece crackles. You have enough. We have enough. But trust is a luxury I lost the night I discovered our empty bank account. All I have now is evidence and rage and desperate hope that justice exists. Please let this work. 11:42. Headlights approach from the east. My heart rate spikes. I see them, Rhodes confirms. Stay down. The headlights extinguish before entering the warehouse yard. 3 minutes later, a second set approaches from the west. Also dark before entry. Both vehicles park near the loading dock with practiced precision. I recognize Ronan's truck. The sedan must be Clayton's. 4 targets confirmed, Rhodes whispers. Let them start unloading before you emerge. I count 4, Ronan, 2 males, 1 female. Brent, Clayton, and Cressida, I breathe. Wait for my signal. Need them with hands on artifacts. Doors open. 4 figures emerge. Ronan's tall frame. Cressida's long black hair catching streetlight. Clayton's compact build, Brent broader than I remembered from the gala. Ronan opens his truck bed. Clayton pops the sedan trunk. Inside, carefully wrapped objects representing 6 years of theft and murder. Lawrence's entire collection, $4.8 million. Ruth's inheritance about to be sold. Careful with that one, it's the most valuable piece, Ronan says. The wire picks it up perfectly. The phone camera captures him lifting a wrapped painting. Clayton unwraps a ceramic piece, examining it with his flashlight. Buyer's meeting us here in 20 minutes. Everything needs to be laid out. 20 minutes. Rhodes's team will move in 15. Cressida holds up a painting, running fingers along the frame. This painting alone is worth $500,000. We did it. We did it. As if Ruth's death was just necessary cost of doing business. The fury I've controlled for 6 months threatens to break through. My hands shake against cold metal. Easy, Rhodes whispers. Stay calm, we've got them. They unload methodically. Paintings, ceramics, textiles. 3 Native American artifacts from Lawrence's father's collection. Each piece examined, laid out on drop cloth spread across concrete. Ronan directs placement with his flashlight, like arranging an art gallery instead of a crime scene. He thinks he's won. Brent handles a carved wooden mask with casual disregard. That piece is nearly 200 years old. Everything looks good, Clayton says. Buyer's contact just texted on schedule. Perfect, Ronan replies. By midnight, we'll have 4.8 million in bearer bonds and a clear path forward. No more hiding, no more waiting, no more wife, I think. Once he has the money, how long before I become another unfortunate accident? Rhodes's voice came through the earpiece, low and final. 2 minutes. I pressed my back against the cold metal shelving and closed my eyes. Thought of Silas and Wren sleeping at Lawrence's ranch. Thought of Ruth's torn diary. Thought of the moss-green scarf folded in an evidence bag. Saskia, Rhodes again. You ready? I opened my eyes. Ready, I whispered. Then every door in the warehouse opened at once. I pull my phone from my pocket and hold it up the screen, casting a cold glow over my husband's shattered face. State troopers stand in a perimeter around us. My voice echoes off concrete walls. I know about the mortgage fraud. I know about the Cayman accounts. Cressida grabs Ronan's arm. We need to leave, now. I know about Ruth's collection, I continue. I know what you stole. Ronan's flashlight finally lowers. His face is ghost white in the dim warehouse light. How long have you known? 6 months, since the night I found our bank account empty. Cressida's voice turns sharp. Ronan, she's bluffing. We need to go right now. I'm not bluffing, I say. I press play. The car recording fills the warehouse. Cressida's voice crystal clear through my phone speaker. Ruth knew too much about the collection. Ronan's voice responds, I know. The recording continues. Logistics about tonight's transfer. Details about the buyer. Clayton's name mentioned twice. Brent confirming warehouse location. Cressida's face goes white. All the color drains from her skin like someone pulled a plug. Clayton steps forward. Give me that phone. Now. It's already backed up, I say. Cloud storage. Detective Rhodes has a copy. This is just for you to hear what I've known for months. I look at Ronan directly. You still think you can protect me after murdering your mother? Silence. The word hangs in cold warehouse air like smoke. Did you kill your mother? I ask. My voice is calm, clinical. Yes or no, Ronan? More silence. Ronan's mouth opens, but nothing comes out. Cressida breaks first. It was an accident. She fell. Don't, Ronan whispers. But I'm already pressing play on the second recording. The one Ilara's device captured 3 weeks ago. Cressida's voice again talking to Brent outside Clayton's gallery. She knew too much. Brent was going to frame Sterling, but she figured it out. Brent's voice on the recording. So what happened? Cressida's voice clear and damning. What happened to Ruth wasn't an accident. She knew too much. The recording continues for another 10 seconds. Details I don't need to hear again. Proof that Ruth's death was premeditated. Proof that all 4 of them knew. Cressida sinks against the truck bed. Her legs seem to give out. Ronan drops to his knees on the concrete floor. The sound echoes sharp crack of kneecaps hitting hard surface. And then he's sobbing. Actually sobbing. First genuine emotion I've seen from him in months. Not when I told him I loved him. Not when he kissed our children goodnight. Not when he attended Ruth's funeral and delivered the eulogy about loving mothers. But now that he's caught, I'm sorry, he chokes out. God, I'm so sorry. The warehouse doors explode open. All 4 entry points simultaneously. Rhodes leading Montana State police officers with flashlights and weapons drawn. The beams cut through darkness like searchlights. Montana State Police, Rhodes shouts. Drop weapons hands where we can see them. Brent drops his gun immediately. It clatters on concrete. Both hands shoot up. Clayton raises his hands more slowly, calculating whether he can run. On the ground, an officer yells. All of you now. Cressida slides down to concrete, already crying. Clayton follows face pressed to cold floor. Brent assumes the position like he's done this before. Ronan doesn't move. He's still on his knees, sobbing into his hands. 2 officers approach him, weapons trained. Hands behind your head. He complies slowly. The handcuffs go on first metal, clicking shut around his wrists with mechanical precision. Then Cressida. Then Clayton. Then Brent. Then 4 sets of handcuffs clicking shut in mechanical succession, snapshot sound I'll hear in my dreams forever. Rhodes walks past me, checking each restraint personally. Professional, thorough. The tactical team begins photographing the artifacts spread across drop cloths. Evidence tags appear. Camera flashes illuminate paintings worth hundreds of thousands. Officers pull each conspirator to their feet, reading rights, recording names and booking information. Ronan is last. Two officers lift him from concrete. His face is destroyed, tear-streaked red, swollen. Nothing left of the charming doctor who convinced me to marry him 10 years ago. Rhodes walks him toward the warehouse exit. They pass within 3 feet of where I stand. Ronan stops, looks directly into my eyes. "The kids," he whispers. "Please don't let them think I never loved them." I don't answer. Rhodes pulls him forward gently but firmly. Out through the loading dock door, into the flashing lights of 6 police vehicles waiting outside. I watch through the doorway as they load all 4 into separate cars. Ronan's head hangs low as the officer guides him into the back seat. The door closes with hollow finality. Gone. The metallic click of handcuffs closing on Ronan's wrists is the quietest sound in the warehouse and somehow the loudest. The officer securing them begins Miranda rights in practiced monotone. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Ronan turns to me. Tears stream down his face. His voice breaks completely. "Saskia, please. I never meant for any of this to happen. You have to believe me." I stare at the concrete floor. Oil stains pattern the surface like abstract art. I can't meet his eyes. 6 months of investigation collapses into this single moment, my husband begging forgiveness for orchestrating his mother's murder. "Please," he whispers. "I love you. I always loved you." I turn away. The officer continues rights recitation. Ronan's voice fades into desperate pleas that blend with police radio chatter and camera flashes documenting recovered artifacts. I hear footsteps in the warehouse entrance, heavy, uneven. Lawrence appears in the doorway wrapped in a thick coat despite mild November weather. He looks suddenly old, frail. Decades added in the 6 months since Ruth died. Ronan sees his father. His face transforms with desperate hope. "Dad, please." Lawrence walks past him, doesn't pause, doesn't look, walks directly to where Rhodes stands cataloging artifacts spread across drop cloths. "When can I reclaim Ruth's collection?" Lawrence asks. His voice is steady, professional, like asking about a business transaction. "Dad," Ronan's voice cracks. "Dad, please." Lawrence examines a painting. His fingers hover over the frame without touching. This was her favorite. 19th century landscape. She inherited it from her grandmother. "Dad, I'm still your son," Ronan pleads. "Please look at me." Lawrence speaks to Rhodes like Ronan doesn't exist. "The estate attorney will contact you regarding proper documentation for recovery." "Please." Ronan's voice dissolves into sobbing. The officer pulls him toward the exit. Ronan twists in handcuffs, trying to maintain eye contact with his father. Lawrence never turns, studies the artifacts with clinical detachment, cataloging what was stolen from the woman he loved. Outside, 6 patrol cars illuminate the parking lot with red and blue strobes. Officers guide Ronan toward the nearest vehicle. His legs barely support him. He stumbles, catches himself. At the car door, he turns back one final time. I stand in the warehouse doorway, silhouetted by interior lights. Lawrence beside me. The image of family he destroyed. The patrol car pulling away with my husband inside looks like a ship sailing into fog, visible, then translucent, then gone. "Watch your head," the officer says, placing hand on Ronan's skull. Ronan's mouth moves through the window. No sound reaches me, but I can read his lips. "I love you." The car door slams shut. "It's over," I whisper to Lawrence. He nods slowly. Ruth would have wanted to see this. She did see it. That's why she changed her will. December 1st arrives with pale morning light filtering through Lawrence's ranch kitchen windows. 7:30 a.m. The television plays morning news on low volume. Breaking overnight Montana art theft ring busted. 4 suspects arrested, including victim's own son. Artifacts valued at $4.8 million recovered. Ruth Harrington murder investigation formally reopened. Footage shows the warehouse. Police tape. Officers carrying wrapped paintings. Then mugshots, Ronan, Cressida, Clayton, Brent. My husband's face frozen in booking photo horror. Lawrence sits at the kitchen table watching. His coffee sits untouched, growing cold. He hasn't spoken since we arrived at 3 a.m. My phone vibrates on the counter. Again and again. 17 missed calls from numbers I don't recognize. Reporters probably, media vultures smelling blood. I power it off completely. Montana State Police credit an anonymous tip and 6-month investigation, the reporter continues. Charges include conspiracy to commit murder, grand theft, wire fraud, and money laundering. Lawrence finally speaks. His voice is rough, barely audible over the morning news. It's done, he says. Just that. 2 words carrying 40 years of marriage, 6 months of grief, and 1 night of justice. That's why she changed her will. Footsteps on the stairs. Small, hesitant. Wren appears first in pink pajamas, dark hair tangled from sleep. Silas follows clutching his stuffed elephant. Where's Daddy? Wren asks immediately. Her voice is small, frightened. When is he coming home? I kneel to eye level. My knees crack against hardwood floor. Choose words carefully. How do you explain to children that their father murdered their grandmother, that everything they knew about their family was constructed on lies? Dad has to go away for a while, I say. My voice is steadier than I feel. He made some very serious mistakes, very bad choices. What kind of mistakes? Silas asks. He's only 5 years old, but his eyes hold disturbing understanding, like he already knows the answer and just wants confirmation. He hurt people, I say. He took things that didn't belong to him, and now he has to face consequences. Wren starts crying. Immediate heartbroken tears. I want Daddy! I pull her into my arms. I know, sweetheart, I know. But Mom is here. Grandpa is here. We're going to be okay. Is Daddy in jail? Silas asks. No point lying. They'll hear it eventually, see it on television, overhear adult conversations. Yes, I say. Silas nods, processes this information with eerie calm. Then he looks directly at me with those sharp, observant eyes that remind me uncomfortably of Ronan. Does Dad know you're smarter than he thinks? The question hangs in kitchen air like smoke. Lawrence looks at me with something approaching pride. Respect earned through 6 months of investigation he watched unfold. Evidence I collected while playing Invisible Wife. My 5-year-old son already knows what it took me 30 years to learn. Women have to be smarter than the men who underestimate them. I realize my children watched me transform. From a quiet wife accepting every explanation to a woman who brought down a criminal conspiracy. They saw everything I thought I was hiding. 14 months after the night of November 30th, I stood at the courtroom podium in Yellowstone County Courthouse and faced my husband for the last time. The room was packed, media in the back rows, Lawrence directly behind me, Detective Rhodes in the 3rd row with the prosecution team. I finally understood what closure felt like. It was nothing like relief. Ronan sits at the defense table in county orange jumpsuit, handcuffed, staring at the table surface like it holds answers. He hasn't looked at me since I approached the podium. I unfold my prepared statement. My hands don't shake. Ruth Harrington dedicated her life to protecting historical heritage. I begin. My voice carries across the silent courtroom. She died doing just that. Ronan's shoulders tense. She was murdered while protecting her family's collection from theft. Murdered by people she trusted, people she loved. I pause, make myself breathe. I stand here for justice for her, and because my children need to know truth is worth defending no matter the cost. Finally, Ronan looks up. His eyes meet mine for the first time in 3 weeks. Red-rimmed, hollow. I hold his gaze without flinching. I won't teach my children that family loyalty means protecting criminals. I won't teach them that love requires silence in the face of murder. Ruth deserved better. My children deserve better. I fold the statement, return to my seat beside Lawrence. His hand finds mine, squeezes once. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, reviews sentencing documents. The courtroom holds its breath. Ronan Harrington, she begins. You are hereby sentenced to 25 years in Montana State Prison for conspiracy to commit murder, grand theft, wire fraud, and money laundering. 25 years. Silas will be 30 when his father is released, older than I am now, sitting here watching justice delivered. The judge continues. Cressida Frost, 20 years for conspiracy to commit murder and grand theft. Cressida dissolves into tears at the defense table. Her attorney puts a steadying hand on her shoulder. Clayton Pierce, 15 years as accessory after the fact. Clayton's face remains impassive. He knew this was coming. Brent Frost. The judge's voice hardens. for the murder of Ruth Harrington committed with premeditation and malice, life imprisonment without possibility of parole. The courtroom erupts briefly. Gasps, murmurs. A reporter in the back row types frantically on her phone. Brent was the actual killer, not Ronan, not Cressida. Brent pushed Ruth off that mountain overlook, while Ronan and Cressida waited below to stage the accident scene. Lawrence sits motionless beside me, his face carved from stone. Bailiffs approach the defense tables. Ronan's face crumbles as they prepare to lead him away. His attorney whispers something. Ronan shakes his head. He turns back toward me one final time. No words exchanged, just recognition that everything between us is permanently severed. 10 years of marriage dissolved in 6 months of investigation and 1 December sentencing hearing. Lawrence stands, touches my shoulder gently. Let's go home. The kids are waiting. Outside, Rhodes waits on the courthouse steps. I never met Ruth Harrington before she died, Rhodes said. But I've spent 14 months learning exactly who she was. She would have liked you. Is it supposed to feel this empty, I ask? She studies me with those sharp detective eyes. Justice isn't about feeling good. It's about being right. 1 week later, Bernard Hampton calls requesting a meeting at his law office. Lawrence and I arrive at 2 p.m. Bernard's receptionist escorts us to the conference room, where documents are already spread across polished mahogany table. With the guilty verdict finalized, Bernard begins Ruth's sealed will clause activates. He slides papers toward me, trust documents, property deeds, asset inventories. The entire 25-acre ranch transfers to you, Mrs. Harrington, in trust for Silas and Wren. The remaining antique collection approximately $3.2 million after recovered items. Lifetime residency granted to Lawrence. The fraudulent mortgage is legally voided. I stare at the documents. Numbers swim before my eyes. $6 million total. Mrs. Ruth signed this amendment 3 weeks before she died. Bernard continues quietly. 3 weeks. My hands go cold. She came to my office, Bernard says. Asked me to prepare specific protections that would activate only upon Ronan's conviction for crimes against her or her estate. She was very precise about the conditions. Lawrence leans forward. She knew 3 weeks before. She told me. Bernard interrupts gently. Bernard, if I'm right about my suspicions, Saskia will need this protection. If I'm wrong, none of this matters, and Ronan inherits as planned. The office falls silent, only the wall clock ticking. She knew what Ronan was planning, I whisper, and she died trying to gather proof. She hoped she was wrong, Bernard says, but prepared in case she was right. Lawrence's face crumples. He covers it with both hands, his shoulders shake. It's the first time I've seen him cry. The will ensures Ronan cannot inherit anything upon conviction. Bernard continues giving Lawrence privacy for his grief. Every asset she controlled goes to protecting her grandchildren from their father's choices. Lawrence lowers his hands. His face is wet. She knew he was planning to steal from her, suspected he might. He can't finish the sentence. She spent her final weeks preparing legal protections without alerting anyone to her suspicions. Bernard confirms, very deliberately, very carefully. I think of Ruth's torn diary, her moss-green scarf left at the death scene. The amended will signed 3 weeks before Brent pushed her off that overlook. She knew. She suspected her own son of conspiracy, gathered what evidence she could, prepared legal safeguards for her grandchildren. And then she died before she could finish. My wife, Lawrence says softly, spent her whole life being smarter than everyone realized. She always knew. She always saw through people, every single day of it. Late December. The museum board appointed Alara Whitfield as acting director during the permanent search. I visit to congratulate her, finding her in Ruth's former office, surrounded by collection catalogs and preservation manuals stacked 3 feet high. The office still smells faintly of lavender. Ruth's sachets, probably, hidden in desk drawers or tucked behind books. Alara looks up when I knock. Her eyes are red. I keep expecting her to walk through that door and tell me I'm doing it wrong, she says. I sit across from her in the visitor chair where I sat 6 months ago when Ruth was still alive, and I didn't yet know my husband was planning her murder. She chose you for a reason, I say. She saw something in you. I'm terrified of disappointing her memory. Alara's hands twist together. I'm 28 years old. There are curators with 30 years' experience who applied for this position. Why me? Because you have something they don't. What? I remember Ruth's words from that last conversation before everything unraveled. Her assessment of people, Her ability to see character beneath surface credentials. A conscience, I say. Elara goes very still. She told you that, didn't she? I ask. Elara nods slowly. 3 weeks before she died, we were cataloging a new textile acquisition. She said, Elara, you have a conscience. That's more valuable than experience. I didn't understand why she trusted me so much back then. Elara continues, wiping a stray tear. But she was looking ahead. She knew the museum would need someone who couldn't be bought or manipulated after the scandal broke. She protected all of us, I say quietly, looking at the neatly organized folders on the desk, even when she couldn't save herself. We sit in the quiet room for a moment, letting the weight of Ruth's silent guardianship settle over us. The main gallery has been transformed. The Harrington collection occupies the entire East Wing, now artifacts cleaned, catalogued, restored. Brass plaques identify each piece with meticulous detail. And at the entrance, a memorial plaque, the Ruth Harrington Memorial Collection, in honor of a life dedicated to preservation. Many pieces I remember from childhood visits to the ranch, the landscape paintings that hung in Lawrence's study, the Native American textiles Ruth handled with white cotton gloves, the ceramics displayed on custom shelving she designed herself. I stop at a particular vase, blue and white porcelain, 19th century. My teenage repair mark is still visible under the museum lights, a thin line of adhesive slightly darker than the surrounding glaze. I remember the day I broke this, I say. I was 17, carrying it from the study to the collection room, and I tripped over the doorframe. It shattered into 6 pieces. The ceramic vase sits behind museum glass with my teenage repair visible proof that broken things can be preserved, scars and all. I was terrified Ruth would be furious, I continue, but she just handed me the conservation-grade adhesive and taught me the proper repair technique. She kept it anyway, Elara says, your repair and all. She always saw value in imperfect things. December 25th arrives cold and bright, Christmas morning at Lawrence's ranch. I wake early, 5:30 a.m., pale winter light, just beginning to filter through bedroom curtains. The house is silent, children still asleep. Lawrence hasn't woken yet. I make my way downstairs in slippers and robe. The kitchen smells like pine from the tree we decorated last night. Wren insisted on hanging every ornament herself. Silas carefully arranged the presents beneath the branches. Mail sits on the kitchen counter. Lawrence must have brought it in yesterday evening. Bills, holiday cards from distant relatives, and one envelope that makes my breath catch. Montana State Prison return address. Ronan's handwriting on the front, my name written in the careful script I used to find romantic. His handwriting looks the same, like nothing changed. I pick up the envelope, not thick, maybe 2 pages. His first letter since conviction 3 weeks ago. I sit at the kitchen table staring at it. Morning light strengthens outside. Snow falls gentle and steady, covering the hills in fresh white. I could read it right now. Alone in early morning silence before the children wake, demanding presents and breakfast. I could know what he wants to say. What apologies or justifications or pleas he's written in his prison cell. Or I could wait, tomorrow, next week, next year, or never open it at all. The choice is mine, that's what matters. I'm not afraid to read his words. Not afraid of what emotions might surface or what memories might resurface. 6 months of investigation taught me I'm stronger than my fear, but I haven't decided how I want to feel afterward. I place the unopened letter on the table. Stand. Make coffee in the French press Ruth gave us 3 Christmases ago. Pour a cup, add cream, sit back down. Sit. Snow falls outside the kitchen window where 6 months ago I first suspected my husband of murder. Same view, different woman watching. Maybe I'll read it tomorrow, or next month, or next year when Silas asks about his father, and I need to understand what Ronan wants our children to know. I wasn't sure I would read it today, but I didn't throw it away either. Footsteps on the stairs, small, excited. Wren and Silas rushing down for Christmas morning. Mom! Wren bursts into the kitchen in her snowflake pajamas. It's Christmas, can we open presents? Silas follows more carefully, clutching his stuffed elephant. His eyes go immediately to the envelope on the table. What's that? Wren asks, following her brother's gaze. I pick up the letter, hold it steady. Something from Daddy. Silas studies my face with those sharp, observant eyes. Are you going to read it? Wren asks. I look at my daughter, 6 years old, asking questions she shouldn't have to ask. My son watches with understanding beyond his years. Someday, I answered. But not today. The tree lights reflect in Wren's eyes as she tears open her presents, and somewhere between watching her gasp at the new art supplies and hearing Silas murmur quietly over his Montana wildlife book, I realize something I hadn't expected. I am genuinely here, not performing happiness, not counting down until I can be alone. Just here on the living room floor on Christmas morning, present in my own life, for the first time in longer than I can remember. Lawrence sits in the armchair by the window, a cup of coffee going cold beside him. He isn't reading, isn't watching television. He is simply watching the children the way you watch something you almost lost with attention that borders on reverence. The morning light catches the silver in his hair, and for a moment he looks ancient and permanent, like the ranch itself. Like something the winter cannot touch. Grandpa, look. Wren holds up a set of watercolor brushes, fanning them in her small fist like a bouquet. There's one for every color. There's one for colors that don't even have names yet, Lawrence says gravely. Wren considers this with enormous seriousness. I'll find them, she decides, and returns to sorting through her supplies with the focused intensity of someone who has accepted a great commission. Silas has barely moved since unwrapping his book. He turns pages, slowly stopping to study each photograph. Birds of prey, elk migration routes, the hibernation patterns of grizzly bears in western Montana. He traces a map with his fingertip, following a river's path through mountain ranges, and the gesture is so like Lawrence, that same patient attention to how things connect, that my chest tightens with something I can't name. Not grief exactly, something more complicated. The understanding that people carry each other forward, whether they intend to or not. Ruth's photograph watches us from the mantel. Lawrence placed it there in early December, framed in the simple silver frame that used to sit on her office desk at the museum. In the photograph, she is laughing at something outside the frame, a genuine, unguarded laugh, the kind you can't manufacture. I have studied that photograph many times in the past weeks, trying to memorize the specific way joy looked on her face. I want to be able to describe it to Silas and Wren someday, when they are old enough to ask about her as a person, rather than as a story. Turkey roasts in the kitchen, using her handwritten recipe card, propped against the backsplash in her careful cursive. I found the card tucked into her recipe box when Lawrence asked me to take over the cooking this holiday. The instructions are precise and practical, exactly like her temperature timing frequency of basting. At the bottom, in different ink, added later, a small amendment she'd written, "Save the drippings. The gravy is the whole point." I made the gravy this morning. I saved every drop. By evening, the dining table is set for 4, but Lawrence places a small plate at the sideboard before Ruth's photograph. Turkey sliced thin, a spoonful of mashed potatoes, a careful arrangement of green beans. He does it without ceremony, without explanation, his back to us as he works. When he turns around, his expression is composed, private with feeling. Wren notices immediately. She always notices. "Did you save some for Grandma?" "Yes," Lawrence says, "always." Wren accepts this as the most natural thing in the world. "Good. She loves turkey. She told me once at Thanksgiving. She said it was the only time of year she let herself eat 2 helpings." Lawrence's mouth moves. He presses his lips together briefly. "She did say that..." He confirms, his voice rough at the edges. "Every year." I watch him settle into his chair at the head of the table and think about what it means to love someone for 40 years. To know their small rituals so completely that continuing them after they're gone is less a choice than a reflex. Lawrence doesn't set that plate because it brings him comfort, I think. He sets it because Ruth is still present in this house in every way that matters, and to stop acknowledging her would be a kind of erasure he refuses to commit. After dinner, after the dishes, after Wren falls asleep on the living room rug, surrounded by colored pencils, and Silas drifts off on the couch still holding his book, Lawrence and I sit by the fire with the last of the evening's quiet wrapped around us. "She would have loved today," he says. "She did love today," I answer. "That's why she made sure we'd still be here to have it." He looks at me across the fire and says nothing, but his expression holds something that takes me a moment to identify. It is gratitude, but not the polite kind, the deep kind, the kind that has no adequate words and so settles for silence. December 26th. The snow crystallized overnight and the early light turns everything blue and precise. I walk to the pine grove on the eastern edge of the property before anyone else wakes, my boots breaking through the thin frozen crust, with each step the cold so clean it feels like clarity. Ruth's headstone is simple. Her name, the years of her life. 3 words: wife, mother, curator. She chose them herself, Lawrence told me. Said she wanted the stone to tell the truth rather than perform grief. I kneel and brush fresh snow from the carved letters with my bare hand. The granite is very cold. I made your gravies, I tell her. Lawrence said it was right. He had 2 helpings. The pines hold the silence. Snow releases from a branch somewhere above me in a soft collapse. Silas is reading about Montana wildlife now. He asked Lawrence to take him tracking in the spring. Wren painted 3 pictures before dinner and cried when one of them wasn't right and then fixed it anyway. I pause. They're going to be good people. I think you already knew that. Wind moves through the upper branches. The sound it makes is not quite language, but not quite silence either. I haven't read his letter yet, I say. It's been sitting on the kitchen table for 3 days. I'm not afraid of it. I just haven't decided what I want to feel when I open it, and I've finally learned that I'm allowed to take that time. I press my palm flat against the cold stone. You gave me that. The right to take my time. The right to choose. I stand. The grove is very still. Thank you, I say quietly, for preparing everything you prepared, for trusting me before I trusted myself, for knowing the ending before I could see past the middle. I walk back toward the house. The sun is just clearing the eastern ridge, throwing long shadows across the snow, and somewhere in the distance a hawk traces wide circles above the frozen creek. January 1st, the year begins in white. Lawrence takes the children out after breakfast to follow the tracks that cross the property overnight. I watch from the porch with my coffee, the steam rising and dissolving in the cold morning air. Silas is already crouching over a set of prints near the fence line, pointing out something to Wren with the serious authority of someone who has been studying all the right books. Wren follows his finger, nods, then runs ahead to find the next set. Lawrence watches them with his hands in his coat pockets, smiling at something small and private. This is what survived, I think. Not the collection, though it's safe now, cataloged and protected in the museum's East Wing where it belongs. Not the ranch title, though it's in trust for my children now, their inheritance secured by a woman who loved them before they were old enough to understand what love could cost. Not even justice, though. Justice came and was exactly as hollow and necessary as Detective Rhodes promised it would be. What survived is this: Lawrence teaching Silas the difference between fox prints and coyote prints in January snow. Wren shrieking with triumph when she finds a trail and follows it to the tree line. The hawk overhead, the cold air, the specific quality of light on the first morning of a new year. I step off the porch and cross the snow toward them. Ronan's letter is still on the kitchen table. I may read it today, I may not. I have decided to stop deciding and simply let the morning tell me what it needs. What I know is this: the invisible wife he married does not exist anymore. She dissolved somewhere between the garage at 1 in the morning and a warehouse floor in November between Ruth's torn diary and a courtroom in December between the woman who learned to make herself small and the woman standing in January snow watching her children learn to read the world. I am not invisible. I am not cold. I am not finished. Wren turns and sees me coming. Her face opens completely, the uncomplicated joy of a child who knows she is safe and loved and located precisely where she belongs. Mom, she waves both arms. Come look, the fox came all the way to the fence. I walk faster. The tracks are small and precise in the fresh snow, each print deliberate, the path direct and unhurried. An animal that knew exactly where it was going. An animal unafraid of the cold or the dark or the open ground between the forest and everything beyond it. I crouch beside my daughter and look where she points. She came right up to the house, Wren says, awed. Right up close. She wasn't scared at all. I look at the small, perfect prints in the snow. No, I agree, she wasn't. And to you listening to my story, remember this: the people closest to us are the ones we need to see most clearly. For 10 years, I played the invisible wife. I ignored red flags because I wanted to believe in my marriage. Don't make my mistake of confusing loyalty with blindness. When someone shows you who they are through their actions, late nights missing money, whispered phone calls. Believe them the first time. I waited too long to trust my instincts, and it nearly cost me everything. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any wound because it comes from those we trust most. But here's what I learned: true family revenge isn't about destruction, it's about justice and protection. Ruth taught me that real family revenge means refusing to let family betrayal win, choosing yourself when toxic loyalty demands silence. I believe God gave me strength to see truth when I needed it most. When family betrayal threatens to break you, remember that justice isn't vengeance. Seeking truth rooted in faith rather than bitterness can save you and your children. Family revenge, when it comes from a place of protection, becomes redemption. If this resonated with you, leave a comment. What would you have done differently? Would you have confronted the betrayal earlier? Share this with someone who needs it. If you believe in stories where justice prevails, subscribe to Her Revenge for more stories of strength and survival. Thank you for staying until the end. Your time means everything. Remember, while this story contains fictionalized elements, the lessons about recognizing betrayal are real. God bless you.